Chapter 1 Reasonable. Let's just forget about last night. Zhu Fei, who had not yet woken up from his drowsy sleep, shook his head, which was a little sore, and looked at the large stack of cash on the bed, still unable to react. He gradually woke up when he saw Su Li, who had already changed into clothes from a famous brand. Beauty, last night everyone was drunk, and it was consensual. Is it necessary to insult me like this? Besides, do I look like someone who is short of money? Zhu Fei's gaze scanned the beauty in front of him up and down. He had to say, she was a natural beauty. Her figure was completely incomparable to that of an ordinary woman. Feeling the other person's scorching gaze, Su Li's pretty face became extraordinarily rosy. This damned guy doesn't know how to cherish women. Last night was so vigorous, and she still has some pain. Moreover, that was still her first time. But thinking about her life from now on, her face became a little cold. So what do you want? Name your price, within reason, I can satisfy you. Zhu Fei smiled. He was the top soldier in the Great Xia, and was respected by the world as the king of hell. Moreover, not to mention the unlimited amount on his bank card, even if there was a limit, the balance on the bank card given to him by his family was also an amount of wealth that countless so-called rich people could not surpass. I said, I'm not the kind of person who sells their body. If you want something that is mutually agreeable, and you charge for it, it becomes illegal. I'm a good citizen who abides by the law. If you're short of money, just name a number, and I'll treat you to a drink, okay? Short of money? Su Li laughed. She was the president of the Kayao Group in Jiangnan City, and was worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Would she be short of money? Great. It's not cheap to buy me a drink, but I'll let you have it for 100 million, and that's a bargain. Zhu Fei had just lifted the covers and was about to pull up his pants and leave, but he didn't care about what Su Li had said, and his gaze was full of shock as he looked at a red stain on the sheets. At that moment, a million thoughts raced through his mind. What a sin! This woman who came out to a bar to get drunk is still a virgin. What's more, it seems that last night he didn't prepare any safety measures either. This is a disaster. Zhu Fei's face suddenly broke out in cold sweat. Su Li, however, thought that Zhu Fei was shocked by the price and sneered immediately. What? Can't you pay? If you can't pay, then don't talk big. I'll give you the money to buy tonic. I was quite unimpressed with your performance last night. With that, he turned around and was about to leave. At this point, Zhu Fei couldn't take it anymore. Impressed? What the hell is impressive? Isn't that the same as saying around the bend that he's not good enough? She wasn't satisfied? Without even having time to pull up his pants, he took a step forward and pushed Su Li, who was about to leave, up against the wall. Did you just say I'm unimpressive? Su Li's entire heart rose to her throat. Looking at the guy in front of her, whose chest was covered in scars, she felt a little more fear in her eyes. She looked down, quickly turned her head away, and blushed. With a stiff upper lip, she angrily said, "You pervert. What do you want?" No means no, what? You're planning to do it again in the morning? Fine, I'll go all the way with you, and we'll see if you or I go soft at the end. Zhu Fei admitted that he had backed down. But that doesn't mean he can't do it. The main reason is that there are no safety measures. He is also afraid that in the future, like some melodramatic TV dramas, if he shows up at someone's door with a child in his arms and says that he has abandoned his wife and child, then it will be really hard to explain himself. Fine. Name a number, and we'll forget about this today and pretend that nothing happened, okay? Su Li smiled. There was a hint of disdain on her face. What? You're backing down already? I thought you were so awesome. Zhu Fei didn't want to waste any more time with her and turned around to get dressed. His tone became very calm. Seeing him like this, Su Li also calmed down. Although there was still some pain, she endured it. Do I look like someone who is short of money? We are just strangers, goodbye. Just as Su Li was about to leave, Zhu Fei spoke. 100 million, is that enough? At some point, Zhu Fei had already sat on the sofa in the room and quietly lit a cigarette. Su Li didn't say anything, but the expression on her face already showed it. 100 million? There are no more than 10 people in the entire Jiangnan region who can casually come up with 100 million. She would never believe that a man she met in a bar would have such wealth. 200 million. Seeing that she didn't say anything, Zhu Fei thought that it wasn't enough. 300 million. A new round of price increases began. At this time, Suli spoke. How about this, a fixed price? 1 billion. Xu Fei laughed and extinguished the cigarette butt. Good. Suli was dumbfounded when she saw that he had agreed so readily. Do you know what a billion is? If you can come up with it, I'll be yours. Suli laughed angrily. All you can say is a billion? Do you really think you're the only child of a wealthy family? Money is nothing to you. No, I'm only 25, I don't want a relationship, it's too tiring. But if you insist on hanging around me, it's not impossible. After all, beautiful women like you are not easy to come by. Xu Fei let out a light laugh, and his eyes swept over her unabashedly. Suli was so angry that her teeth were clenched and her chest rose and fell. She had never seen anyone who could pretend so well. Give me your bank account number. Xu Fei reached out to ask for her account number. Suli, without the slightest hesitation, handed over her personal bank card. She didn't believe that this man could really come up with 1 billion. A few seconds later, her phone vibrated. When she took it out, she saw that it was a text message from the bank. It clearly said, 1 billion yuan has been deposited into your bank card with the last 8 digits 0088, and the balance is 101-230-1435. She was stunned. Looking at the series of zeros, she was a little dizzy. Your card. Goodbye. After handing the bank card to Suli, Xu Fei turned and walked out of the room, leaving Suli, who was still in a daze. It wasn't until Xu Fei had gone far away that Suli reacted. However, there was no longer any sign of Xu Fei in the room. Who? Was he really? Suli couldn't believe it. She had just wanted to avoid losing her virginity to a womanizing young master who had slept with countless women, so she went to the bar to get drunk. But she never expected to have given away her virginity so carelessly. And she had received such a large sum of money. No matter how she thought about it, she felt like she was a prostitute. She flipped open her best friend's number and dialed. A few seconds later, her best friend Fong Qing's voice came from the other end of the line. What's wrong, my big boss? Can't you let me sleep in peace this early in the morning? Suli said with some hesitation, Qing, I think I've done something wrong. Fong Qing's somewhat lazy voice rang out over the phone. What is it? After hesitating for a few seconds, Suli said, I sold my first time. Chapter 2, Showdown. I'm her husband. The next second, a piercing scream came over the phone. What? What are you talking about? Her best friend seemed to have been awakened by her words, and even the sleepiness was gone. I said I sold my first time to a stranger. This time, Suli seemed much calmer. Are you crazy? You're going to marry Zhao Xiao next month. If he finds out you did this, you won't have an easy life. Fong Cheng's tone was full of anxiety. But to her surprise, Suli gave a self-deprecating smile. Do you think my life will be easier after I marry into this family? I might as well give him to a dog. Ever since she met Zhaoan, Suli had never thought that her life would be easy. Because she had heard more than once that Zhaoan had come out of a certain hotel with a certain woman. It was different almost every day, so what good life could she expect if she married him? You. Fong Qing was also stunned by her words. After a few seconds, she said, you are the president of KO Group, worth hundreds of millions, and your first time, you can't sell it for just tens of thousands of dollars, right? Suli hesitated. She didn't know whether to tell her best friend the price. But after thinking about it, she said it. 10 billion. That person gave me 10 billion. In fact, to this day, Suli is still confused. 10 billion, you couldn't even fit it in a truck. She really couldn't think of what kind of person that man was. He transferred the money without even blinking. My dear Su President, are you drunk? 10 billion? That's enough to buy KO Corporation, okay? Fong Qing obviously didn't believe it. If it were true, then the money would be too easy to make. Ordinary people can't even earn this much in a lifetime, or even 10 lifetimes. This is a number that countless people can only dream of. Really? All this money is now in my personal account. That guy's gone, and I don't know what to do. Suli was a little overwhelmed. So much money, enough to solve all her problems right now. The reason her parents wanted her to marry Zhaoan was because of KO Company. Now KO Company is under pressure from the market and the Zhao family. Without sufficient funds, the new products that KO Company is researching and developing cannot be launched, and may even be discontinued, causing the entire company to suffer. Because the entire company has invested all its manpower and resources into this, it cannot fail. If it fails, the company will go bankrupt and be liquidated. Contracts with other companies will naturally be terminated, and compensation will be paid to the other party for breach of contract. Zhao promised that if he married her, he would invest 500 million yuan in Kaio Company to support their research. Don't panic. Since the other party is willing to give you money, it means that he doesn't want any trouble. You can feel at ease taking this money, and you can use it as if it were your own. But there is a problem, and that is that the other party is unknown, and we don't know what their real intentions are. The fact that they can come up with so much money at once definitely means that they are not ordinary people, so you'd better be careful. Upon hearing her best friend's words, Suli became a little panicked. If the other party really came with some sort of ulterior motive, what should she do? In case. You're somewhere? I'm coming over now. Fang Qing obviously didn't trust her and wanted to come over herself. I'm going back to the office now, you can come find me there. After hanging up the phone, Suli felt particularly uneasy. Looking at the balance on her phone, she was still in a daze. On the other side of the line, Chu Fei had just arrived at the building housing Kaio Company. Looking at the note in his hand, he saw only an address, this place. There was also the name of a woman, Suli. Although he couldn't understand why his master had asked him to protect this woman, he would be free once he had completed this last task. However, this task would take the longest of all the tasks he had ever performed, 3 years. After 3 years, he could go wherever he wanted. I wonder what this woman looks like. If she's ugly, I'll be devastated. If she's pretty, something good might happen. Chu Fei let out a wicked smile, then strode into the lobby. The receptionist saw someone come in, quickly put down her phone, and looked at the person with a smile. Her heart raced the second she saw Chu Fei. So handsome. What a body, what a face. He's practically made for me. The receptionist couldn't help but smile to herself, but quickly suppressed the smile. Sir, may I ask who you are looking for? Chu Fei smiled slightly and said, Hello, is Suli here? The receptionist was taken aback. This person is actually looking for the CEO. Hello, sir, may I ask if you have an appointment to see our CEO? Generally, people who come to see the CEO make an appointment in advance. After all, not everyone can meet with President Su. No. But I'm here to protect her. I'm her personal bodyguard. Just tell me where your president's office is, and I'll go up there myself. Personal bodyguard? The receptionist girl laughed lightly. Handsome guy, have you read too many novels? Just because you've built up a lot of muscle, you think you can be our president's personal bodyguard? Are you also deluding yourself into thinking you can be our president's husband? This kind of plot only appears in novels, so don't even think about it. Chu Fei was full of black lines. This little girl doesn't believe it. What should I do? Hey, you've seen through me. Okay, I'll lay my cards on the table. I am your president's husband. I came here to see her because it's urgent. Just tell me where her office is. The receptionist girl was completely taken aback and rolled her eyes. This person is really crazy. Most people in the entire Jiangnan city know that the president is going to marry Mr. Zhao of the Zhao group next month. Now suddenly there's a husband popping up out of nowhere. Who would believe that? I'm telling you, pick someone else to brag about. Our president is going to marry Zhao's son next month. If Zhao's son hears this, you'd better watch out. Marry next month? Chu Fei's heart was filled with doubt. If you get married, you'll be someone's wife. I haven't even tried it yet. It's okay, getting married won't stop her from having 2 husbands. The receptionist gave him another disgusted look. Sure enough, there are quite a few shameless people in the world. Hurry up and leave, or I'll call security. I don't want to say another word to a scumbag like you. As soon as the words left her mouth, the receptionist saw Suli, exhausted, slowly walking into the lobby. She quickly straightened up and respectfully called out, President Su. Chu Fei also subconsciously looked back to see what this woman the master told him to protect looked like. When he turned around, he was directly dumbfounded. Su Lijin was planning to go back to the office to take a good rest, and when he heard the receptionist greet him, he happened to look up and saw Chu Fei standing in the lobby. For a moment, the two of them stared at each other. What are you doing here? Almost at the same moment, the same words came out of both of their mouths. Chapter 3, You'll be amazed at how well you can do it with your bare hands. The receptionist was surprised to see the president and this strange man so in sync. Could this man really be the president's boyfriend? Or husband? No way. Suli took a deep breath and finally understood what her best friend had said to her. Sure enough, this guy had come looking for her. What do you want? She looked at Chu Fei with a cold face. Chu Fei was about to speak when Suli interrupted. Come with me, she said, and walked towards the elevator. Chu Fei shrugged and followed behind. He was also very annoyed. Why did this woman seem to be following him everywhere? But he suddenly remembered that the girl at the reception called this woman President Sue. In an instant, Chu Fei felt a chill run down his spine. Could it be that this woman was the target of his mission? If that's really the case, wouldn't that be ridiculous? When they arrived on the 16th floor, Suli led Chu Fei into her office. She put down her bag and sat in the office chair that belonged to her. Didn't you say it was over? Why did you come to my company? What exactly is your purpose? She stared at Chu Fei angrily. This guy, it's fine if he paid for his first time. But he has the nerve to come knocking on my door. Does he want his money back? The worst that can happen is that I refund the money to you, right? Just consider it a sacrifice on my part, I'll accept it. Upon hearing this, Chu Fei turned black. He had no idea that the person the old man had asked him to protect was the woman who had gone crazy with him at the hotel last night. What's even more fatal is that this woman is still a virgin. You think I want to? With your fierce personality, do you really think I want to get involved with you? If it weren't for Chu Fei's 2 words just now, he would have shut up. With a woman like this, he can only be considered unlucky. You. Suli saw that he was calling himself a tiger and immediately lost his temper. He stood up from his seat and pointed at the office door. Get out of here. I'll transfer the money back to you later. I don't want it. Chu Fei was also a stubborn person. He got up and was about to leave. However, just as he reached the door, he stopped again. No. I can't go. I have to follow you. If I leave now, when the old man finds out, he'll definitely give him a good scolding. Are you sick? Why are you following me? Do you want to do it again? Suli thought that this guy was still obsessed with her, and was fantasizing about something happening again. After all, most men would be unable to move when they saw her. What's more, it seemed like she had taken the initiative last night. Cough. Chu Fei coughed feebly. Suli also realized that she had lost her temper, and tried to calm down. His murderous gaze fixed on Chu Fei, as if he wanted to devour him. Actually, I didn't come here for any particular reason. I just want a job. How about this? I'll be your personal bodyguard from now on. Wherever you go, I go. I don't care about the salary, you know that. I don't need money. Chu Fei waved his hand nonchalantly and turned around, sitting back down on the sofa. Someone like you can't even keep up with the physical exertion, and you want to be my bodyguard? Kid, eat more wolfberries to replenish your energy. Suli's words directly made Chu Fei fly into a rage. He could be described as ugly, and he could be described as a scumbag. But he refused to be called small. Who are you calling kid? Are you not convinced? Fine. Just wait. Sooner or later, I'll catch you at the right time and show you what a real man is. As a result, these words made Suli's mouth curve upwards. It seemed that she had thought of something, and her face turned a little rosy. I don't know who it is, but I'm standing in front of him and I don't dare to move a muscle. Chu Fei was so angry, but she was right about everything she said. If something goes wrong, the old man will have to skin himself alive. You just said that you are now my personal bodyguard, right? Suli looked at Chu Fei with a smile on her face. It seemed that she was plotting something. Looking into each other's eyes, Chu Fei knew that this woman was definitely going to mess with him. But he couldn't go against the old man's orders. Yes. May I ask, what arrangements have you made? Chu Fei could only wear a black face and wait for Suli's orders. I heard that people in this profession are very capable. What special skills do you have? Show me. For example, can you break a stone with your chest? Can you split a board with your hands? If that doesn't work, how about a backflip? In fact, Suli didn't really want to see Chu Fei perform the so-called breaking a stone with his chest. She only said that to make Chu Fei look ridiculous. This guy is shameless. She couldn't let go of the anger in her heart without making a fool of him. You think I'm a monkey? And doing a backflip? Go stay somewhere cool. Chu Fei refused directly. He really thinks of himself as a monkey. He could do chest splitting and brick breaking when he was 5. Gee, it seems you're not a good bodyguard. Suli gave a disgusted sound and directly broke Chu Fei's defenses. No good. No good again. In the morning, he said he was average, and just now he said he was a little guy. Now, he's saying he's no good? This is intolerable. Chest-crushing boulders, right? Come on. Today I'll show you this tiger woman what you're made of. Chu Fei glanced left and right and saw the ashtray on the table. This is used to entertain guests. The transparent glass ashtray is as thick and hard as stone. If it hits your head, it will definitely make an opening. He picked up the ashtray and slammed his hands together. Pop! The entire ashtray was smashed to pieces by his slap, and the glass pieces fell to the ground. Suli froze in place. She didn't expect that he would take her seriously after she just teased him a little. Now, am I qualified to be your personal bodyguard? Chu Fei looked at Suli and let out a sigh of relief. You little girl, you're still a bit young to play with me. Suli recovered her senses and nodded slightly. Well, not bad. Go, get a broom and clean it up for me. At that moment, Chu Fei had a million impulses in his heart, and that was to squeeze this woman hard. Let her know why flowers are so red. In the end, he obediently walked out of the office and went outside to get a broom and sweep up the broken glass on the floor. And just after sweeping it up, a pretty girl with a pretty face rushed into the office. After seeing Suli, she let out a long sigh of relief. My big boss, I finally got to see you. Chapter 4, What did I do wrong? Can't I just change? The person who came was Suli's best friend, Fong Chung. When she saw Chu Fei in the office, she looked a little puzzled. Is this your new cleaner? He's quite handsome, but it's a pity to see him work as a cleaner. Chu Fei exploded on the spot. Cleaner? The world's top solo warrior was being treated like a cleaner? You're the cleaner, and your whole family is a cleaner? Suli, who was standing nearby, burst out laughing. Cleaner, this position is quite suitable for this guy. Okay, you can go now. Chu Fei held back his breath and walked out of the office with a dark face. Fong Qing looked at Suli with some confusion. I said, my big boss, where did you find such a handsome young man? Name your price, I'll hire him to be a model at my modeling agency. With his looks and body, he'll definitely be a hit. Suli then restrained his smile and returned to his calm. He looked at the door with some complicated eyes and took a deep breath. Do you remember what I told you this morning? He is that guy. At that moment, Fong Qing's eyes were about to pop out. It took a long time for her to react, and she looked at her in shock. Are you serious? Someone who can afford to pay 1 billion to buy you as a cleaner? Suli was also full of helplessness. She didn't know why Chu Fei would approach her. Moreover, he wanted to be her personal bodyguard. The other party actually didn't have any ulterior motives towards her. As for the money he gave her, it might just be to make up for himself for the accident last night. Actually, it wasn't me who approached him, it was him who approached me. He said he wanted to be my personal bodyguard. He even showed me how he could split an ashtray with his bare hands. See, those pieces of glass in the trash can were from the ashtray he smashed with a slap. Fong Chang leaned over to take a look in the trash can, her eyes sparkling with intense curiosity. Do you think he might have fallen in love with you at first sight? This kind of plot is often seen in TV dramas. It's a bit melodramatic, but it does happen in real life. Upon hearing Fong Qing's words, Suli's eyes also lit up. It's not impossible. In fact, Suli doesn't dislike Chu Fei. On the contrary, for some reason, she likes to argue with him, and she feels very satisfied when she sees the look on his face as he tries to contain his anger. No way. A rich playboy like him would fall in love with me at first sight? I'm afraid it's not love. While talking, she also looked at his chest intentionally or unintentionally. This pair is a burden, it's so heavy. What's impossible about it? Think about it, which rich guy would give you 10 billion in one go? And at a time like this? Fong Qing's words were reasonable, and they made Suli believe a little. And Chu Fei, who was standing outside the door, could never have imagined that he would be regarded as having fallen in love at first sight. He didn't care about the money at all. Why don't you ask him to come in and ask? Fang Qing's eyes twinkled, and a wicked smile played on her face. Su Li shook his head quickly and gave up. His face then became a little downcast. Maybe the other party really just wanted to distance themselves from me, and I'm going to the Zhao family's engagement tonight. Although I have this money in my hands now, even if I invested in the company, Kaio still won't be able to resist Zhao's group. And my parents will never agree to cancel the wedding. Upon hearing this, Fang Qing also fell silent. The Zhao group is one of the top groups in the entire Jiangnan city. There are very few companies that can stand on equal footing with them. If the Zhao group targets Kaio Company, then Kaio Company will go out of business within 3 months. This is the strength and influence of the Zhao group, and most companies would not choose to go against it. I'll go with you tonight? Fang Qing comforted her. I'll go by myself, I don't want to drag you down. Su Li politely declined. She didn't want to drag Fang Qing into this because of this matter. She had her own plans in her heart, and she still had a trump card in her hand. She didn't want to use it until the last minute. Once she used it, there would be no place for her in the entire Jiangnan. Okay. By the way, that rich guy outside will go with you, right? Maybe he can help? In Fang Qing's eyes, Chu Fei is a wealthy man. He can easily throw around a few $100 million. No, I'm not taking him. Su Li shook her head. She wasn't going to take anyone with her. She didn't want to involve anyone else in this matter. Okay, your company is quite busy too, you can go back first. Su Li gathered her emotions together and flashed Fang Qing a smile. The latter knew that this woman was going to shoulder this alone. But she really didn't have the right to interfere in this matter. I'll go first, call me if there's anything. After saying that, Fang Qing walked out of the office with her bag. Before leaving, she didn't forget to give Chu Fei a deep look. Feeling Fang Qing's gaze, Chu Fei was full of confusion. He hadn't done anything bad, why did this woman look at him like he was a bad guy? Su Li, on the other hand, sat in her office chair, a little lost in thought. What should she do? She spent the day in a daze, until 4 p.m. Su Li took a deep breath, shut down her computer, fixed her makeup briefly, grabbed her bag and opened the office door. Chu Fei had already moved 2 chairs and fallen asleep on them. Su Li's face turned black, and she kicked the stool with her leg. Get up! Chu Fei lazily got up and stretched. Finished work? Let's go! After saying that, he got up and left. Su Li's face turned black at the sight. Are you the boss or am I the boss? Chu Fei paused for a moment, then stepped aside, flashing a smile. Please, my big boss. Seeing him like this, Su Li pursed her lips, trying to smile but unable to. The thought of what was about to happen tonight made her heart feel like a huge stone was weighing on it, suffocating her. When they arrived at the parking lot, Su Li threw the keys at Chu Fei. You know how to drive, right? Chu Fei smiled and said, of course. Remember to wear your seatbelt. Sitting in the passenger seat, Su Li leaned back in her seat, her eyes a little unfocused. Chu Fei watched her like this and couldn't help but frown slightly. But he didn't say anything and drove quietly. Half an hour later, when the car arrived in front of a luxurious manor, Su Li spoke. Wait a minute. The car stopped not far from the entrance. Su Li took a deep breath. Okay, you can go back. Chu Fei was stunned. Where am I going? Just find a place to stay for the night and come pick me up in the morning. Chu Fei was not happy about this. No, after all, I am your personal bodyguard, right? Not only did you not find me a place to stay, but you also told me to go live outside? What, is it going to delay you from finding a man? As soon as these words came out, Su Li's eyes instantly turned red. She stared back at Chu Fei, tears swirling in her eyes. Just go. Don't look for me again. I know you don't want to take responsibility either. This is perfect. You've got what you wanted. Chu Fei couldn't bear to see a girl cry. In fact, in his eyes, Su Li had always been a very strong-willed girl. But he didn't expect the other person to cry. This crying took him by surprise. So what? What did I do wrong? Can't I change? Chapter 5, No one can save him if I say so. Chu Fei really couldn't understand what the woman was thinking. It wasn't like she took the initiative that night. And he even said he would make it up to her, so why was she crying now? You can't change it. Just go. Su Li was crying her eyes out, and she turned her head and started walking towards the manor. Chu Fei was unhappy. He stepped forward and grabbed Su Li's arm. What can't I change? Stop right there. Who said I can't change? I'll change if you say so. Just don't cry anymore. At this point, Su Li finally stopped crying, her delicate body trembling slightly. She looked back at Chu Fei, her voice a little choked. Actually, I came here to get engaged. The Zhao family is not someone you can mess with. Although you and I had a relationship once, if Zhao finds out, you will be in danger. I don't want to involve outsiders, so you should go. It was only then that she revealed the reason. In fact, it wasn't Chu Fei who made him angry and caused her to cry. Rather, she couldn't help feeling aggrieved when she thought about her life from now on. When Chu Fei heard this, he let out a long sigh of relief. So it wasn't because of me. You scared me, I thought it was because of me that you cried. But you said I would be in danger, that's wrong. I only have one bodyguard, why would they trouble me? Right. I said I would protect you closely, so I will. Let's go together. It's just an engagement, what's there to be afraid of? It's a great thing. In Chu Fei's opinion, Su Li's engagement was not a bad thing. It had nothing to do with him anyway, and a tiger mother like that would bring bad luck to anyone who encountered her. But as soon as Su Li heard this, she felt her chest ache with anger. Get out of here. Chu Fei shrugged, pulled her back into the car, and drove directly into the manor after stepping on the accelerator. Su Li also took the opportunity to wipe away her tears and return to her previous appearance. However, the redness of her eyes still made it obvious that she had cried. There were countless luxury cars in the manor. In front of the luxurious villa, many of the top gangsters in Jiangnan came to congratulate the Zhao family on their engagement. Chu Fei parked the car in an open space and opened the door for Su Li. At the same time, the gazes of those at the door all looked over. Many of them fixated on Su Li, taking in the presence of what was known as the most beautiful woman in Jiangnan. Zhao was at the door, and the moment he saw Su Li, his eyes lit up. Please come in, uncles. I'll go get my wife. Upon hearing this, everyone laughed. Everyone knew full well that the so-called wife was nothing more than his plaything. The woman by Zhao's side could basically not last 3 days before being replaced. As for Su Li, even if she is the most beautiful woman in Jiangnan, in their opinion, she will last for a week or two at most. Little Li. Zhao walked quickly up to Su Li, smiling. Trying hard to maintain a gentlemanly attitude. Su Li's expression was very cold, and she was not happy that she was about to get engaged. Because, before she came in, she had already made up her mind to fight to the death. Seeing her like this, Zhao's face looked a little unpleasant. Just as he was about to reach out and take Su Li's hand, Chu Fei, who was standing nearby, stepped forward and grabbed his wrist. Please be polite to our CEO. Or I'll punch you. Su Li, who was standing nearby, froze. Is this guy crazy? Doesn't he know that the man in front of him is Zhao? Zhao also frowned and looked at Chu Fei. Li, who is he? He was very unhappy with Chu Fei, who had suddenly appeared. He's the bodyguard I hired. Chu Fei, let go of Mr. Zhao. Bodyguard? Zhao's eyes narrowed slightly, and there was a hint of derision in the way he looked at Chu Fei. Chu Fei then let go of his hand. In fact, the first time he saw Zhao, Chu Fei knew that this kid was no good. His gait was flippant, and it was obvious that he had overused his kidneys. He didn't know why Su Li had chosen such a man, and wasn't he afraid that he wouldn't be able to satisfy her in the future? Li, are you looking for a bodyguard now to protect me? Or are you afraid that I might do something to you? As he spoke, Zhao looked at Su Li. His tone carried a great deal of resentment. After tonight, the two of them would become engaged. In fact, it would not be an exaggeration to say that they were officially married. Because sooner or later, Su Li would become his. Mr. Zhao has misunderstood. I just think that there is nothing wrong with finding someone to protect yourself. Su Li still had that same aloof look on her face, her tone calm. Zhao didn't say much either, and walked side by side with Su Li towards the villa hall. As soon as they reached the door, Zhao said to Chu Fei, "You can go, President Su is not going back tonight. Tonight, he is going to eat Su Li. He has waited so long for this opportunity. He won't let it go so easily." Upon hearing this, Su Li's heart trembled. She knew she couldn't escape. Her right hand tightly gripped the object in her bag, and she wanted to take it out and smash it in Zhao's face right now. She wanted to tell everyone there that just yesterday, she had gone out with another man and had given Zhao a big green hat. "I'm not your bodyguard, who the hell are you to order me around? Did your mother give you the nerve?" When these words came out, Su Li was dumbfounded. Although she didn't want Xu Fei to leave, she definitely didn't want Xu Fei to get into a conflict with Zhao. You have to understand, this is the Zhao family manor. Even if he has the strength to split bricks with his bare hands, there are at least 20-30 security guards here. Can he deal with so many people alone? What's more, this guy even insulted Zhao. With Zhao's temper, he definitely wants to teach Xu Fei a good lesson. Sure enough, Zhao's face instantly turned cold after listening. He looked at Xu Fei with the same gaze as if he were looking at a dead person. "You've got a lot of nerve. How dare you speak to me like that? For the sake of Shaoli, I'll give you a chance to leave. Otherwise, I'll break your legs." Upon hearing this, Xu Fei laughed. Most people who dare to speak to him like this are already in hell. My mother should know if I'm gutsy or not. And break my legs? I have to say, you're the gutsiest son of a bitch I've ever met. Upon hearing this, Zhao was completely enraged. At first, he thought about sparing the life of this arrogant bodyguard for the sake of Su Li and letting him go. However, he had actually insulted him in front of his face. "You want to die? Security guards?" In an instant, several well-dressed security guards in suits appeared on the side, each holding a baton. Su Li panicked at the sight and hurriedly begged for mercy. "Mr. Zhao, is this really necessary? He is just a bodyguard, let him go." Then he gave Xu Fei a wink, telling him to hurry up and leave. After all, she didn't want Xu Fei to spend the rest of his life in a hospital bed. However, Xu Fei acted as if he hadn't seen anything, casually glancing at the security guards. Zhao grabbed Su Li's chin with one hand, his expression fierce. "Su Li, let me tell you. No one dares to speak to me like that in Jiangnan, he's dead today. No one can save him, not even Jesus." Chapter 6, I Killed a Dog. I hope I'm not disturbing your enjoyment. Suddenly, the atmosphere became extremely tense. Several of the surrounding security guards had their weapons in their hands, ready to pounce at any moment. Su Li's entire heart was in her throat. "Zhao, if you dare to touch him, the wedding is off." For Xu Fei's safety, she was willing to risk everything. Even if Kao Company went bankrupt, she didn't want to drag Xu Fei down with her. Suddenly, Zhao's eyes grew cold. He looked at Su Li with a hint of coldness in his eyes and sneered. "Su Li, I don't understand why you care so much about a bodyguard. What, do you have an affair with him? If that's the case, then there's no way he'll walk out alive today." Su Li's heart trembled. In fact, Zhao was right. But she couldn't tell everyone in the open now. Just as she hesitated, Xu Fei spoke up. He casually reached up to scratch his ear and pointed his finger at Zhao. "You're right. You're right, President Su and I did have an affair. That night, drunk and infatuated, President Su was very aggressive. I can only tell you that it felt very good. Unfortunately, you can't experience it." Xu Fei's face was full of enjoyment, which made Zhao instantly furious. Although he knew that the boy was saying this to provoke him. But he would not allow anyone to say such things to the woman he loved. Next to him, Su Li's pretty face turned red in an instant. But it quickly turned pale, because this was Zhao's territory. She really couldn't figure out why this guy had so much nerve. He actually told Zhao what happened last night in front of him. "Very good. You have successfully angered me. Today I will tell you who to mess with and who not to mess with in Jiangnan. Go on, break his legs." Zhao waved his hand, and the several security guards next to him immediately swung their sticks forward. The next second, Su Li took a step forward, and took the lead in blocking Xu Fei. And the security guard's stick fell on her forehead the next second. Bang! A dull sound rang out. Su Li only felt something hot and slippery slide off her face, and her head felt a little dizzy. When she reached out to wipe it away, her pale palm was covered in bright red blood. Her body grew weak and she fell backwards. Xu Fei was quick and deft, catching Su Li before she fell. His face instantly turned cold. He hadn't expected this tiger woman to get in his way. The security guards around them were too shocked to move when they saw Su Li's broken head. Meanwhile, the business leaders inside heard the commotion outside and came out one after the other. "And, what's going on? A middle-aged man with a beard, wearing a Zhongshan suit, walked out the door. He was Zhao Wei, the chairman of the Zhao group and Anne's father. Anne's face was a little sinister, staring at Chu Fei with murderous intent. "It's fine, Dad. You and the uncles eat, I'll be there in a bit." The people around looked at the situation and guessed what had happened, but no one said a word. Everyone knew the Zhao family's strength. Zhao Wei glanced at Su Li, who was bleeding, and Chu Fei, who was supporting him. Deal with it as soon as possible." After saying that, he smiled and said to the others present, "Everyone, I'm sorry to have disturbed your enjoyment. Let's go back and drink." Upon hearing this, the crowd walked back into the hall, closing the door behind them. At this moment, Zhao En's gaze fell on Chu Fei. "Kid, you'll pay for what you just said. Get him off of me, General Su, and kill him." Zhao En waved his hand, and several security guards were about to step forward again. This time, Chu Fei moved. He slowly laid Su Li flat on the ground, and then slowly got up. Looking at the several security guards walking towards him, he gave a cold smile. If someone who knew him well were here, they would definitely know that this was a sign of his anger. A commoner's anger can cause blood to splash 5 steps. A king's anger can cause 1,000,000 corpses to fall. When the king of hell is angry, you will die if he wants you to, and no one can stop him. Who? One of the security guards' batons smashed down hard on Chu Fei's head. Chu Fei raised his hand to block and then threw a punch at the other person's chest. Bang! A muffled grunt sounded. The security guard was sent flying by the punch, and his breastbone was completely broken. He lay on the ground, not knowing if he was dead or alive. The other security guards around him, seeing their comrade being beaten, immediately pounced on him. But bang, bang, bang. Within just a few seconds, all the security guards were lying on the ground. The sound of painful screams echoed in Zhao En's ears. It was only then that he realized that the bodyguard that Su Li had hired was no ordinary bodyguard. Seeing the opponent getting closer and closer, Zhao En panicked a little and backed up step by step, until he was pressed against the closed door. "What do you want?" Chu Fei didn't say a word, and suddenly took a step forward, and with one hand, he grabbed Zhao En's neck. "You're full of crap." A loud slap resounded. This slap knocked out both of Zhao En's teeth. Ouch! Zhao En's neck was being squeezed, and the knocked out teeth could not be spit out at all. His eyes were wide with fear. However, this was not the end. Chu Fei raised his hand and punched Zhao En in the stomach. Then, he let go of his hand. Zhao En let out a scream, and the bloody tooth in his mouth was swallowed by his stomach. Guliolu! Ah! Zhao En collapsed to the ground, his face full of pain, unable to even scream. Chu Fei then walked over to Su Li's side, looking at the woman who had taken a beating for him. He felt a little helpless. "You woman, why are you so fierce? Men are fighting, what's a woman's business?" He then picked Su Li up from the ground. Looking at Zhao En lying on the ground, his eyes turned cold once again. He walked up to him, looked at the closed door, and his tone turned cold. "In your next life, remember to be a good person." Zhao En had not yet come back to his senses when he heard these words. He looked up suddenly, but he didn't know when Chu Fei had already stood in front of him. That cold gaze was like looking at a dead person. Before he could even ask for mercy, Chu Fei lifted his leg and kicked. Bang! The terrifying power was like playing football. The kick sent Zhao En flying, knocking open the villa door. At that moment, countless pairs of eyes in the entire hall looked over at them. When they saw Zhao En lying on the ground covered in blood, like a dead dog. Suddenly the entire hall fell silent, so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Everyone was shocked. "This Zhao family young master, I'm afraid, is dead." Chu Fei swept his gaze over everyone present, his tone calm. "Sorry to disturb everyone's enjoyment. You shouldn't mind if I killed a stray dog, should you?" Chapter 7, Want some ham? Zhao Wei, who was in the crowd, looked at his son lying on the ground and couldn't hold back any longer. He quickly walked up and picked up Zhao En, whose spine had been broken by the kick. However, the latter did not respond in the slightest. He wasn't even breathing. Zhao Wei trembled as he reached out his hand and felt for a pulse. It was gone. He suddenly looked up at the door. Chu Fei was holding Su Li in his arms, and in the light of the lamp, it looked very touching. But compared to his dead son, Zhao Wei instantly became furious. "You deserve to die." He had only one son, and as the heir to the Zhao group, he doted on Zhao En. Therefore, even if Zhao had offended people from powerful families in Jiangnan, he would have stepped in to settle the matter. But now, his son was dead. Guards! Suddenly, 2 bodyguards in suits appeared beside Zhao Wei. These were experts hired by him at a high price to protect his safety. Catch him for me. I want him to die without a burial. Without saying a word, the 2 bodyguards closed in on Xu Fei step by step. The other people around them were even more silent. They didn't dare to jinx things at this time, for fear that they might accidentally get the fire to come back to them. Looking at the 2 bodyguards approaching, Xu Fei took a deep breath. If you beat up the young ones, the old ones want to come out too? If you don't want to die, get out of my way. A soft shout echoed through the entire hall. The 2 bodyguards who were walking stopped for a moment. A fine layer of cold sweat appeared on their foreheads. From this shout alone, they could tell that they were no match for this young man. Fighting him would mean death or disability. Everyone was a martial artist, and the strength and vitality of whoever was stronger was enough to tell everything. I'm leaving. If you want revenge, I'll be waiting. Xu Fei hugged Su Li and turned towards the outside. The 2 bodyguards, however, did not dare to move, as if they had been cast under a spell. What are you standing there for? Stop him. Zhao Wei roared at the 2 bodyguards, not understanding why they would let the other person leave. One of them turned back and whispered, Boss, we are no match for him. Not only were they no match for him, no one in the entire Jiangnan region would be a match for that man. The terrifying aura emanating from the other party is something only a strong person who has walked out of a sea of corpses and blood can possess. Zhao Wei's face could be described as black to the extreme. His son was killed, and he didn't dare to say anything. What's more, the 2 bodyguards he hired at a high price didn't dare to do anything. He was furious. Hospital. Su Li slowly woke up, with a bandage wrapped around her forehead. Her head was throbbing. Looking around, she saw Xu Fei standing by the window, lost in thought. Xu Fei? Hearing Su Li's voice behind him, Xu Fei turned around. Seeing Su Li, who had already woken up, he let out a small sigh of relief. Then he chuckled. I have to say, you're really gutsy. You dared to take that blow, didn't it hurt? Su Li glared at him. My head is bleeding, do you think it hurts? Right, why did I come back? In Su Li's eyes, the 2 of them were on Zhao's territory. It was basically impossible to leave. She didn't understand how Xu Fei had brought her back. You still have the nerve to say that. I carried you on my back to the car and then brought you to the hospital. Tell me, how are you going to make it up to me? At this, Xu Fei's gaze rested on Su Li's delicate body. The latter obviously sensed his lecherous gaze and immediately her pretty face turned black. Get lost. Don't even think about it. I was beaten up because of you, wasn't I? This is my business, I don't want you to get involved. But I'm back, so what about Zhao? Su Li was a little worried that Zhao would find Xu Fei in trouble. With the power of the Zhao family, it would be easy to deal with someone, wouldn't it? She didn't want Xu Fei to be in danger because of her. Are you worried about me or that guy with kidney deficiency? Xu Fei tilted his head and smiled. The latter's pretty face twitched slightly, and she felt a little flushed. You're so self-absorbed. Seeing her like this, Xu Fei knew that this woman must be worried about being retaliated against. He laughed lightly and said, Don't worry. That guy will probably never trouble you again in this life. But what's a little embarrassing is that you can't marry him. Should be fine, right? Su Li's eyebrows slightly furrowed when she heard this. She always felt that Xu Fei was implying something. But for the time being, she couldn't figure out what he meant. Her wedding to Zhao was basically set in stone and would hardly change. But this guy was telling her that she couldn't marry him. This was a bit frightening, but at least she wouldn't be harassed by Zhao for a while. Thank you. Su Li thought about it and finally these words came out of her mouth. Don't say empty words, I prefer practical actions. Xu Fei laughed and walked up to her. As he slowly approached, Su Li instinctively covered her chest. Her beautiful eyes stared at him. What do you want? I'm telling you, this is a hospital. Xu Fei leaned in and gave her little face a hard pinch. You little bitch, you're really something. Su Li's face flushed with embarrassment at his actions. She gave him a fierce glare. You're the one who's something, you and your whole family. In my eyes, you're a bandit. From now on, I'll call you Bandit. Chu Fei shrugged nonchalantly, if you're happy with it. By the way, are you hungry? I have ham sausage. Do you want some? Su Li subconsciously thought of something dirty. Yuck. Nasty. You really are a bandit. Chu Fei, however, took out 2 portions of fried rice and 2 ham sausages from the box on the bedside table. You've got a problem. If you don't want to eat it, then don't eat it, but don't call me obscene. Su Li only reacted at this time, and her face turned red for a moment. Are you talking about this ham? Chu Fei looked at her with a puzzled expression. What else? Su Li hurriedly shook her head. No. I'm talking about this too. I'm hungry. I want to eat it too. Chapter 8, Morning Clothes? The next day, Su Li was discharged from the hospital. The wound on her forehead was not very big, and after applying medicine, there was no major problem. Chu Fei drove her to the company. As soon as she returned to the office, she received a call from her secretary. Xiao Yu, what is it? President Su, you're finally back. The chairman wants you to go to the meeting room for a meeting, and all the major shareholders are there. The secretary's voice came over the phone in a hurry. Su Li's pretty face turned white, and she guessed what had happened. But for now, she had to grit her teeth and go meet the major shareholders and her father. What's wrong? Chu Fei looked at her pale little face and asked subconsciously. It's nothing, just a meeting. You just wait here for me. With that, Su Li walked towards the meeting room. As soon as she opened the door, she heard loud noises coming from inside. The major shareholders were arguing loudly, and she even heard some of them saying that they were going to sell their shares and withdraw their investments. When Su Li entered, the whole meeting room fell silent. Sitting at the head of the table was Su Li's father, Su Wu. Over 50 years old, his hair had turned gray. After greeting the chairman, he turned to the shareholders. Su Li walked over to her seat and sat down. Su Wu glanced at the gauze on Su Li's forehead and frowned slightly. What happened at the Zhao family yesterday? You left before I even got there. Originally, Su Wu had planned to go over there later. After all, it was his daughter's engagement, and he definitely wanted to be there. But he never expected that something would happen before he even got there. When he heard that Zhao had been beaten to death by his daughter's bodyguard, he was dumbfounded. When he woke up this morning, all the investment companies had withdrawn their investments, and the companies they were working with would rather terminate the contract than cooperate, even if they had to pay them compensation for breach of contract. He knew that this was the Zhao family targeting Kaio Company. However, the company's latest research and development of the special effects medicine has now entered the final stage, and only the final investment is needed. Once it is successful, the profits will be several times the investment. However, something went wrong. Su Li didn't know how to explain it, so she just kept her head down and remained silent. Seeing this, the other shareholders became even more aggressive and questioned her. President Su. As the president of Kaio Company, you hold a lot of shares. Now that Zhao is dead, and the Zhao Group is putting so much pressure on our company, what are you going to do? When she heard the first 2 sentences, Su Li didn't react much. But when she heard the third sentence, her beautiful eyes widened. She looked up at the shareholder who had just spoken, her face full of disbelief. What did you say? Zhao is dead? Seeing Su Li's appearance, Su Wu also spoke. You, as a party to this, don't know? That bodyguard you hired is really a good person. Not only did he beat up the Zhao family's security guard, he also killed Zhao, incidentally threatening Zhao Wei, and saying that he can come back at any time to seek revenge. Now, the Zhao family's revenge has come, how do you plan to resolve it? Su Li froze in place. She had no idea that after she had fainted, Chu Fei had actually done such a big thing. No wonder when they were at the hospital last night, this guy told her that she would never have to deal with Zhao again. It turned out that Zhao had been killed by him. It's over. Su Li knew that now, Kaio Company would be in deep trouble. At most, it would go bankrupt in no more than 3 months. The only way now was to use the money that Chu Fei had given her to first stabilize the situation. She took a deep breath and spoke slowly. Chairman, shareholders. I still have some money in my hands to support the company's operations. As soon as the words fell, they were greeted by the mockery of some shareholders. President Su. Over the years, I know that the company has been on the rise, and you have also made a lot of money. However, your money is only worth tens of millions at most. Is it really enough for the company's operations? Exactly, what can tens of millions do? I have already decided to sell the shares in my hands and see if anyone is willing to take them over. If no one takes them, the company will have to buy them back. Yes, I'm also planning to sell. In no time, several shareholders present said they wanted to sell their shares. Not to mention, the shares they had in their hands were worth at least more than 100 million combined. Su Wu saw that the situation was a bit out of control and spoke up to persuade. Everyone, don't worry, there must still be a way out of this. I think. He hadn't finished speaking when Su Li spoke up. Shareholders, you want to sell your shares, right? Well, as the company president, I also have the right to buy back the shares. I will buy back the shares you all hold at today's opening price and settle the accounts on the spot. Are you willing? Su Li knew that these people were all fickle. When Kao Company was rising, they all bragged more than anyone else. Once it fell, they were waiting to sell their shares. President Su. Do you have that much money? That's right. Everyone chimed in. After all, they knew about the company's dividends in the past 2 years. They knew exactly how much money each person had. You don't need to worry about it. Just ask if you want to sell. Su Li's face completely turned cold. Since they want to leave, then that's good, and take this opportunity to collect all the company's shares. Nonsense. I don't care if you have that much money. What you have to do is beg the Zhao family for mercy. As Zhao's fiancé, you will go to wear mourning clothes for Zhaoan. I'm telling you, the Zhao family is already preparing the funeral, and you're not going anywhere. I'll take you to the Zhao family myself at noon. Meeting adjourned. Su Wu walked out of the meeting room with a cold face. Su Li's face was also extremely ugly, and she walked towards the office in a daze. As soon as she entered the office, she saw Chu Fei sitting on the sofa, munching on melon seeds and crossing his legs, and she suddenly let out a miserable laugh. You're something. Zhaoan was killed by you. And you kept me in the dark. You're really something. Facing Su Li's strange mood, Chu Fei was a little puzzled. Didn't I tell you last night? Su Li ignored him and just slumped down in his office chair. You know what? My father told me to go and wear mourning clothes for Zhaoan. Chapter 9, actually, I'm a top-level second-generation rich kid. Wear mourning clothes? Upon hearing this, Chu Fei's gaze contained a hint of confusion. He was very puzzled. Zhaoan was already dead. Why would Su Li's father let her wear mourning clothes? Could it be that he was determined to send his daughter to a wealthy family? But even if that was the case, would the Zhao family accept? If it were him, he would never agree. I'm a bit confused. Why would your father do that? Chu Fei voiced his doubts. Su Li gave a miserable laugh and shook his head slightly. It's because the Zhao family is so wealthy in Jiangnan, isn't it? Almost no one in Jiangnan dares to go against the Zhao family. Just this morning, all the conglomerates that had cooperated with the company terminated their contracts overnight. As a result, everyone in the company is now in a panic, and many people have begun to think about resigning. The Zhao family's offensive has directly destroyed the morale of Kao Company. No one would believe that Kao Company could fight against the Zhao group to the end. Isn't it a good thing to terminate the contract? With the compensation, there is a good chance to make a comeback. He had been exposed to some business judgments since he was a child. In his opinion, terminating the contract was not a bad thing. Unless Kao Company had put all its cards on the table in the last step. If so, Su Li's words had explained the current situation of Kao Company. After listening, Chu Fei shook his head. It can be said that Kao Company has reached the edge of a cliff, just one step away from entering hell. Forget it, you wouldn't understand if I told you. I'll go to the Zhao family later at noon, so you don't need to go with me. Is that okay? Although the two haven't spent much time together, Su Li knows that once Chu Fei has made up his mind, nothing can change it. Chu Fei going with her to the Zhao family will only mess things up. She doesn't want anything unexpected to happen again. No way. Chu Fei shook his head. I promised to protect you at all times, so I can't not follow you. Su Li pursed her lips and didn't say a word. Her expression was full of complexity, and she didn't know what she was thinking. I said. Tiger women like you are always cowering at the slightest thing. Just lighten up. I'll tell you today, man. Even if you go against the sky, I'll hold it up for you. Don't doubt me, I have the ability. Upon hearing these words, Su Li's originally melancholy expression suddenly burst into a smile. She gave him a big dirty look. I really don't know where you, a bodyguard, got your abilities from. But I'm quite curious, where did you get all that money? You can come up with so much money in one go, are you really willing to be my bodyguard? Su Li has always been very curious about Chu Fei's identity. In fact, she has also asked her best friend to investigate Chu Fei's identity. But the result was that she knew nothing. It was as if the information about Chu Fei simply did not exist. In fact, I am a top second-generation rich kid, and my family's estate alone covers thousands of acres. I can bring the economies of small countries to a standstill with just a word. Chu Fei crossed his legs and sat on the sofa in a carefree manner. Su Li glanced at him and said with a strange tone, top second-generation rich kid? No wonder you can come up with 1 billion in one go, wow. I'm afraid your family's assets are even more than your inventory, right? Chu Fei is no fool, and he knows exactly what Su Li is implying. You don't believe me? Actually, he's telling the truth. But Su Li doesn't believe him at all. Believe it? How could I not believe it? You're a top second-generation rich kid, okay? Chu Fei was full of helplessness. This woman obviously thinks of herself as a victim. Just as the two were bantering with each other, there was a knock on the door. At this, Chu Fei stood up from the sofa and stood next to Su Li. Su Li also resumed her cool appearance and invited them in. The office door opened and Su Wu's face was a little cold. Let's go. I've already called the Zhao family. Upon hearing this, Su Li's heart trembled. Chu Fei, on the other hand, frowned and wanted to say something, but Su Li gently tugged on his sleeve. Su Wu saw this slight movement, but didn't say anything. He just coldly said, this time, you don't need to go as the bodyguard. He had already heard the news that the Zhao family had arranged countless security guards to be stationed in the Zhao manor. As long as Chu Fei dares to appear, he will definitely not return. No one can stop me from going where I want. Chu Fei has never taken Su Wu's condescending tone well. Then you can leave. My daughter doesn't need a murderer as a bodyguard. Su Wu turned around and looked at Chu Fei with cold eyes. Dad. Can you stop? Su Li, who had not spoken, spoke up. I'll wait for you outside for 3 minutes. Solve this yourself. After saying this, Su Wu turned around and walked out of the office. In the office, there were only Chu Fei and Su Li left. When their eyes met, Su Li spoke first. Why don't? Actually, she didn't want Chu Fei to take any more risks. Even if she went to the funeral in mourning clothes, her life would not be in danger. She thought that the Zhao family would not embarrass her in front of all the top gangsters in Jiangnan. I told you, I will bear the brunt if the sky falls. What are you afraid of? The worst that can happen is that we just turn the table over. Su Li looked at him and knew that she could not persuade him. She could only say in a pleading tone, then you can't just do whatever you want. Look at me when you do it, okay? Chu Fei looked at her gaze and nodded slightly. Then he slowly reached out and stroked Su Li's little face. The latter subconsciously wanted to avoid it, but Chu Fei wrapped his arms around her neck. Don't move. You have eye mucus. Su Li pushed him away with a face that turned red. Bandit. I don't need you to do it. Then he wiped the corner of his eye, but there was nothing there. Are you lying to me? Chu Fei laughed. I actually want to take advantage of you. Su Li's face turned black, and you roll. The two people's flirting made Su Wu, who was waiting outside the door, unable to watch. Is this funny? Suddenly, Su Li hurriedly lowered his head and gave Chu Fei a wink. Chu Fei shut up too. After all, this old man is Su Li's father, and he has to be given some face. After all, he is molesting his daughter. You can go. But remember, no matter what happens, don't say a word or raise a hand. I'll find a way to bring you back safely, understand? Su Wu knew that Chu Fei had no choice but to go. He didn't want to make a final stand unless there was no other way. Okay, Chairman. The three of them took the elevator downstairs and drove straight to the Zhao family. At this time, the Zhao family was full of white lanterns. Chapter 10. Your son can be fertilizer. The Zhao manor was covered in white. The original villa hall had now been turned into a huge mourning hall. A golden threaded nanwood coffin was quietly placed in the center. Incense and candles lit up the entire room. A group of people stood around, wearing mourning clothes. A woman knelt on the ground, crying inconsolably. Zhao Wei stood to the side, his face cold and terrifying. There were also quite a few guests around, holding flowers in their hands, wearing black suits and silently placing the flowers to the side. They then bowed to the coffin before finally leaving the hall and chatting outside. However, the topic of conversation was Zhao Wen's cause of death. Not many people were present that day, and Zhao Wei had also made it clear that the cause of Zhao Wen's death would be kept strictly confidential. Therefore, no one else had any idea how Zhao Wen had actually died. Just as everyone was smoking outside and talking excitedly, a familiar license plate caught everyone's eye. In fact, most people knew that yesterday was the day Zhao Wen and the Su family's daughter were to be engaged. And most people had received an invitation from the Zhao family to come to the engagement ceremony. But before they arrived, they were informed that they did not need to go, and they were also invited to go to Zhao Wen's funeral the next day. At that time, they suddenly woke up to the fact that Zhao Wen was dead. And he died on the day of the engagement ceremony. Who had the guts to do such a thing to Zhao Wen? The natural target of suspicion fell on the Su family. At this moment, when they saw the Su family's car drive into the manor, many people's gazes fell on it. The next moment, they saw the driver get out of the car on his own initiative and open the door. It was just that when they saw the father and daughter of the Su family walking out, they were momentarily dumbfounded. Suwu was fine, dressed in a black suit and with a serious expression. But Suli was different, dressed in a black skirt, a black jacket, and holding a bouquet of flowers in her hands. Judging from the looks of it, she was here to offer incense to Zhao Wen. At that moment, Zhao Wei in the hall naturally also saw the father and daughter Suwu outside the door. But his gaze did not linger on the two, but instead fell on Xu Fei, who was following the two. At that moment, his eyes were bloodshot. "How dare you come here? You want to die." With Zhao Wei's roar, everyone present was shocked. They thought that Zhao Wei was talking about Suli, and they couldn't help but feel a little dazed. As Zhao Wen's fiancée, it seems that Suli should come to pay her respects, right? Why? Was Zhao Wei so angry? However, everyone present that day also saw Xu Fei behind Suwu and his daughter. They were shocked. No one expected the murderer to dare show up again. Wasn't he afraid of death? Last time, he got away. This time, Zhao Wei had deployed hundreds of security guards throughout the manor. Even if Xu Fei was very powerful, 2 fists could not defeat 4 hands. At this moment, Suwu also spoke. "Chairman Zhao, today is not a day for bloodshed. I am very sorry about what happened yesterday, and I have specially brought my daughter here today to mourn for your son. As for the engagement, it is cancelled, is that okay?" Suwu spoke like a scholar. Xu Fei, who was listening on the side, was a little surprised. "I didn't realize that Su Li's father had such skills." From the way he spoke, Xu Fei knew that Su Wu definitely had a backup plan, since he dared to bring his daughter here. Moreover, he could guarantee that the two of them would be able to walk out of Zhao's manor. "Su Wu, I can give you face, but that brat must be buried with my son today." Zhao Wei clapped his hands. In an instant, dozens of thugs armed with watermelon knives swarmed over from all around. In an instant, the hall, which had originally had some empty spaces, became incredibly crowded. And those outside all stared with wide eyes. It was not difficult to guess from Zhao Wei's words that the murderer was the young man by the side of Su Wu and his daughter. But how dare this young man? "Chairman Zhao, this young man is someone close to me. Yesterday's incident was due to his lack of sense of gravity. Today, I have come to offer incense to your son, to dissolve the marriage contract, and the third reason is to discuss compensation." Upon hearing this, Zhao Wei was infuriated and laughed. But before he could say anything, the woman who had been kneeling on the ground crying suddenly stood up. With red eyes, she looked at Xu Fei, who was by Su Li's side. "Did he kill Zhao Wen?" Zhao Wei's face was cold, and he said, "Yes." The woman next to him shouted angrily, "Why are you still talking? Go on, kill him." She was Zhao Wen's mother, Lu Sui. The only female underworld boss in Jiangnan City a long time ago, she retired after marrying Zhao Wei. Although she no longer had the same influence as before, many people still remembered her name. On the surface, Zhao Jiaming relied on Zhao Wei to run the business, but when they encountered some difficult opponents, Lu Sui would step in. The two of them, one white and one black, had managed to bring the Zhao group to this point. Now, the murderer of her son was right in front of her, so how could she possibly hold back her temper? Seeing that the thugs were about to step forward, Su Wu's face sank. "It seems that the two of you are going to shed blood?" Lu Sui could care less about Su Wu, she and Su Wu have no intersection. "So what? I can ignore you and your daughter, but that kid, today he must be buried with my son. Su Wu's gaze fell on Zhao Wei. Is Chairman Zhao not going to talk anymore? Zhao Wei looked at Su Wu, his face was a little dark. In fact, he is not afraid of Su Wu, the person behind Su Wu. Behind Su Wu stands the second most powerful person in Jiangnan City. Although it is not clear what the relationship between the two is, if something happens to Su Wu, the person behind him will definitely step forward. Just find a few reasons to take action against the Zhao group, and things will still be quite troublesome. Although the person behind Su Wu does not get involved in business struggles and will not take sides. If someone is using underhanded tactics behind his back, he will not sit idly by. Chairman Su. If this happened to you, what would you do? Su Wu took a deep breath. So what are you going to do? Lu Sui's eyes were red, and she was also aware of the figure behind Su Wu, which is why she didn't interrupt the conversation between the two sides. Zhao Wei's words had not finished, and Xu Fei could no longer bear to listen. From beginning to end, I was just a guy who could be taken advantage of at will. If the tiger doesn't show its teeth, does it really think of itself as a kitten? He took a step forward and stood in front of Su Li. Zhao Dong, right? Originally, I went a bit too far, and I wanted to apologize to your son or something. Now I see that there is no need for that. Trash like your son, who wastes air when he's alive and land when he's dead, is better off cremated and the ashes scattered in the garden, where they can be used as fertilizer. Chapter 11 Compensation? Not a dime. When these words were spoken, the entire audience was shocked. The air froze. Even Su Wu looked at Xu Fei in shock. He couldn't understand it. He was having a good negotiation, and this kid suddenly came out and said something like that. What does he mean? Does he think Zhao Wei's fire isn't big enough and that pouring oil on the fire will make it even bigger? Kill him for me. Lu Sui completely lost it. She could no longer care less, and she must kill this kid. Zhao Wei's breathing became a little short, and he snatched the watermelon knife from the side of the hitman and planned to do it directly. Su Wu, seeing that things were out of control, immediately cursed Xu Fei in his heart. Su Li was also full of shock. She never thought that Xu Fei would be so fierce. Just when everyone thought that this kid would be killed by a flurry of knives, a voice came from outside. What's so lively? Why are there knives? It's not good to hurt people. The commanding voice made everyone look behind them. They saw a middle-aged man with glasses and a suit walking towards the morning hall with a smile on his face. When they saw the middle-aged man, everyone present made way for him. For no other reason than the fact that the man was Zhang Ning, the number one person in Jiangnan City. Stop! Zhao Wei and Lu Sui shouted out these words almost at the same time. To start a fight in front of the number one person is like looking for trouble. And this number one person does not side with any company or individual. He will only do things according to the rules, even if it is a big company in Jiangnan. As long as you dare to touch his, you can just wait to close down. Unless you have someone behind you who is even bigger than him. Mr. Jiang, why have you come? It's really a loss to welcome you. Zhao Wei put down the machete in his hand and signaled for all the thugs to go back. The originally somewhat crowded morning hall became a bit emptier in an instant. Su Wu walked to the front of the crowd and said, I heard that Chairman Zhao's son was tragically killed, so I came to pay my respects. I hope you will forgive me for not being invited. Zhao Wei's forehead broke out in cold sweat when he heard this. Wasn't this saying that he hadn't invited him? After all, many of the people present were also figures in the officialdom. But he hadn't invited this number one figure, which was clearly not giving him face. Mr. Jiang, what are you talking about? You being here is a great honor for my son, and if my son knew it, he would be proud. Zhao Wei hurriedly said respectfully. However, Lu Sui, who was standing nearby, took the opportunity to cry out. Mr. Jiang, you have to stand up for my son. The murderer of my son is right here, you must arrest him. Upon hearing this, Zhao Wei's eyes lit up. Yes. Zhang Ning is right here, so even if Su Wu brings out the second person, it's useless. Besides, so many people saw what happened at the time. With the evidence and witnesses, and Zhang Ning's temper, even if this kid doesn't die, he'll spend the rest of his life in prison. Mr. Jiang, my son was beaten to death, you must do something for my child. Zhao Wei's eyes were also filled with tears, and he was about to kneel down. Su Wu's face, however, was not looking good. Zhang Ning's appearance was indeed unexpected. After all, he also knew Zhang Ning's character. Moreover, as the number 1 person, his influence was above that of the number 2 person. Su Li's little face also turned pale, and she tightly gripped Chu Fei's sleeve. Looking up, she looked at Chu Fei's face, her heart full of guilt. If she had not brought him along at the time, this would not have happened. Oh? There's such a thing? Since Chairman Zhao has spoken, as the official, I naturally have to uphold the law impartially. Upon hearing this, the Zhao Wei's eyes lit up. Jiang Ning has spoken, there's no escape from this. As long as this kid is thrown into jail, they have 1,000 ways to make this kid die in jail. It's him. Mr. Jiang. Zhao Wei pointed his hand, landing on Chu Fei. And at that moment, Su Li, who was clutching Chu Fei's sleeve, became even more nervous. She was afraid that Chu Fei would be taken away. Jiang Ning turned his head and looked at Chu Fei. His face was unusually calm, as if he was not surprised that Chu Fei was the murderer. Su Wu could no longer hold back, and spoke up to explain. Mr. Jiang, this is a misunderstanding. Su Li also explained from the side, Mr. Jiang, my bodyguard only used excessive force to protect my safety, which resulted in Zhao Wen's death. And as you can see, they started the fight and injured me, which caused my bodyguard to act. She pointed to her forehead, where the gauze was still there, with a streak of bright red blood on it. Jiang Ning nodded slightly, but since the killing was true, I still need to take him back to assist in the investigation, regardless of whether or not it was excessive defense. Upon hearing this, Su Li's mood sank to the bottom. Once the crime is established, Chu Fei is likely to spend the rest of his life in prison. Thank you, Mr. Jiang, for making the decision. Zhao Wei said nothing and immediately bowed. Jiang Ning waved his hand, saying, It's fine, I will investigate this matter myself. Then he walked over to the morning hall and lit 3 incense sticks. Su Wu knew that there was nothing he could do to stop Jiang Ning from taking Chu Fei away today. He could only take a deep breath and say to Chu Fei with a somewhat unpleasant expression on his face, when you get to the police station, remember to say that they started it, that you were acting in self-defense, and that you overreacted. Even if you are sentenced, it won't be for long, and I will find a way to get you out. Chu Fei shrugged and said, It's fine. Su Li, however, looked at him with red eyes and didn't say a word. Chu Fei smiled and reached out to rub her head, indicating that she shouldn't worry. What's there to panic about? Who doesn't have some connections? Who knows, this Mr. Jiang might be a friend of my father's. Upon hearing this, Su Li gave her a white look. This guy, he just bluffs without any hesitation. All right. Everyone, I won't be staying long. Chairman Zhao, please accept my condolences. I'll take him with me now. Afterwards, he looked at Chu Fei. Brother, are you leaving? Chu Fei didn't hesitate, and turned to follow Jiang Ning and his 2 secretaries. Seeing Chu Fei being taken away, Zhao Wei and Lu Sui's moods improved considerably. Right. Chairman Su, you were just talking about compensation, why don't we go inside and talk about it? And about the marriage contract, I think we also need to have a good chat about it. Zhao Wei is not a kind person. He could not let this matter go. Someone had to pay for the loss of his son. Su Wu's face turned a little black and scary, but he had no choice now. The number 1 person had already come out, and the number 2 person behind him might not be able to help much. This matter could only be negotiated with the other party. Before he could speak, Su Li spoke. Her pretty face was cold as ice. When someone died, the marriage contract was naturally dissolved, and as for compensation, there wouldn't be a single penny. Chapter 12, 1,800 yuan a month, and a smile every day. A luxurious private room in a coffee shop. Jiang Ning, a member of the Jiangnan direct family, met the young master. Jiang Ning bowed deeply to Chu Fei, who was sitting on the sofa with his legs crossed. Chu Fei waved his hand, indicating that he should sit down. Jiang Ning then respectfully sat in the seat opposite Chu Fei. In fact, from the moment Chu Fei saw Jiang Ning, he knew that this was an internal member of the family. He also didn't expect that there would be someone from the family who would become a big shot in Jiangnan. Moreover, the family had already received news of him so quickly. What news has the family heard recently? Upon hearing Chu Fei's inquiry, Jiang Ning's face became a little less pleasant. Chu Fei saw his expression and immediately frowned slightly. What's wrong? Jiang Ning hesitated for a moment, but finally spoke. Young master, the family's situation is currently still quite good, and it has not been greatly affected. The Phoenix and we are in the midst of a business war, and both sides have been in a state of tension. Master told me to tell you to stay in Jiangnan and rest assured. He can handle things overseas. Upon hearing this, Xu Fei's brows furrowed even deeper. However, he could not interfere in matters of business warfare either. As long as the other party did not use despicable means, he could ignore it. But if the other party was willing to use dark means, he would definitely not sit idly by. I see. By the way, do you know the origins of the Su family? The Su family? Jiang Ning thought for a few seconds before speaking. Young master, I don't know much about the Su family. But as far as I know, the Su family was just a small family with a small company a long time ago. Under the leadership of Su Wu, they gradually established Kao Company and also got in touch with the second most powerful figure in Jiangnan. For a family like theirs, I can't imagine how they got in touch with the second most powerful figure. Jiang Ning was actually very curious. The Su family didn't have much history, so why would the second in command want to cooperate with them? Although there was no substantial support, many people knew that the second in command was behind the Su family. Oh? That's very strange. Xu Fei was also a little puzzled. He always felt that something was wrong. Master, why do you want me to protect Su Li? A girl from an obscure little family is worth having you, the king of hell, personally protect her? Oh, young master, there's one more thing. The master asked me to tell you. When he said this, Jiang Ning's face was obviously a little embarrassed. What? Xu Fei was a little surprised. It's that the master wants you to go on a blind date. Here are the details of your blind date, take a look. After saying this, he opened a file on his phone. A photo of a beautiful woman with a cold appearance, wearing a uniform, carrying a small shoulder bag, and with a slender figure. Under the photo was written an address and name. Wang Xie, chairman of the Juanhao Group. Wang family? Is that the Wang family? Seeing the surname Wang, Xu Fei was immediately a little surprised. It should be correct. Jiang Ning nodded. The Wang family is also considered a relatively large family in the country, with family businesses all over the country. Not bad. I'll go and meet them sometime. Xu Fei nodded. Jiang Ning let out a sigh of relief when he saw that the young master had not refused. It was rare for someone as outstanding as the young master to take an interest in an ordinary girl. By the way, young master, do you want me to warn the Zhao family? Jiang Ning is well aware of the strength and power of the young master, the sole heir to this family. With just a word, he can make the entire Zhao family disappear from Jiangnan. But the young master is used to keeping a low profile, and opponents like the Zhao family are not worthy of the young master's attention. No need. It's just a small family. Do your job well, and I'll naturally come to you if I need you. Jiang Ning nodded and handed over his business card. Young master, my phone number is on there, so if you need me, give me a call. I will definitely do as you say. Xu Fei waved his hand, and you can go back first, I will go back myself later. Yes, young master. Jiang Ning then led the people to leave the coffee shop. 10 minutes after Jiang Ning left, Xu Fei came out of the coffee shop. Looking at the information sent to his phone, he was a little depressed. However, he could not go find Su Li for the time being. After all, he had just been brought out by Jiang Ning, and going back again would be too childish. After glancing at the information in his hands and thinking about it, he decided to go meet this so-called matchmaking partner. Since his father had arranged it, he had to give him face. He hailed a taxi and went straight to the Juanhao Group. When he arrived downstairs, he called the woman named Wang Xie. Hello? Who are you looking for? A cold, high-pitched female voice came from the other end of the line. Wang Xie? Well, I'm your matchmaking partner. Do you have time? I'm downstairs at your company. Can we meet? In the penthouse office of the Juanhao Group, Wang Xie frowned as she listened to the man's voice on the other end of the phone. She had also received a call from her father yesterday, saying that he had introduced her to a matchmaking partner. Her father didn't say a word about the identity of the person, only that she must make him her boyfriend. Wang Xie was puzzled. What other family in Daxia could compare to the Wang family? There were enough people who wanted to court her to circle the entire Jiangnan city. But thinking about her father's words, she still did not refuse. She wanted to see what this so-called blind date was really like. She hung up the phone and took the elevator downstairs. As soon as she arrived at the door, she saw a man in bodyguard attire crouching in a flower bed not far away, smoking a cigarette. She frowned. Could this be her blind date? He looked like just a little security guard. Had her father made a mistake? Chu Fei happened to see Wang Xie too, and threw away the cigarette butt in his hand. Not bad, this woman is quite pretty. Compared to Su Li, they each have their own charm. Su Li is the type that looks tough on the outside, but is actually quite weak on the inside. But this one looks quite aloof on the outside, I just don't know what's going on inside. Hello, introduce yourself, Chu Fei. He held out his hand. Wang Xie forced down her discomfort and shook the other person's hand. Wang Xie. She withdrew her hand after just a brief touch. Let's chat. Wang Xie didn't say anything, just nodded. The two went to the milk tea shop across the street and ordered 2 cups of milk tea. Tell me, who are you? I like to get straight to the point, I don't like beating around the bush. Wang Xie crossed her arms and looked at Chu Fei with a cold expression. At first glance, she didn't have a good impression of this man. Me? I'm just a small security guard, no 5 social insurances and 1 housing fund, 1,800 yuan a month, always smiling. Chapter 13, I'll sleep on the bed, you can sleep on the floor. Chu Fei took a sip of milk tea and chewed the tapioca pearls in his mouth. On the other side, Wang Xie's brows furrowed deeper and deeper. Looking at Chu Fei's gaze, she always felt that this person in front of her was simply sick in the head. Do you think this is funny? If you don't want to say it, I won't force you. Wang Xie's family values were very strong. For the sake of the family's honor and interests, she would let herself marry a stranger she didn't know, even if the other person was ugly and fat, and she didn't care. That was her way of thinking. I'm telling the truth. I'm not lying. Chu Fei looked at the other person very seriously. Seeing this, Wang Xie got up and was about to leave. For someone like this, she had no reason to continue to waste her time here. Do you really want to know? Chu Fei spoke as soon as she had taken a step. Wang Xie looked back at him and said, What do you think? Although she was not sure what kind of background this man had, she could tell from her father's tone that his family background was definitely not lower than the Wang family, and was even higher. For someone like this, if she could obtain greater benefits for the family, she could completely devote herself to him. Chu Fei smiled indifferently and said, I'll tell you, what are the benefits? I'll be your girlfriend. Wang Xie did not hesitate and spoke directly. Chu Fei was stunned when he heard this. This woman, is there something wrong with her? After just one meeting, she wants to be my girlfriend? No? Then I can accompany you once. Looking at Wang Xie's proud figure, Chu Fei felt that this benefit was not bad. However, he was not the kind of man who would settle for less. No thanks. If you want to know my identity, you can ask the top people in your family. If they don't want to tell you, it means you're not allowed to know yet. I'm just going through the motions of a blind date. You're not my type. Chu Fei smiled slightly and took a sip of his milk tea. To be honest, he didn't like Wang Xie in front of him, simply because of her personality. But her figure was another matter. On the contrary, Su Li was quite to his liking. Although that woman was a bit of a tiger, at least she was more assertive than the woman in front of him. Really? What type do you like? An older sister? A lowly, or maybe pure? As long as you can name it, I can change according to your requirements. Wang Xie actually knew in her heart that since her father did not tell her the identity of this man, it meant that the other party's identity was even greater than the Wang family's. If she could really be with the other party, then nothing else mattered. I want a colorful and seductive woman, can you do it? Chu Fei's words were shocking, and they directly made Wang Xie freeze in place. For a long time, she couldn't react. Did you do that on purpose? Chu Fei smiled without saying a word. Isn't it obvious? Good. You'll see next time we meet. After saying that, Wang Xie turned around and left directly, leaving a dumbfounded Chu Fei behind. It seemed that he had caused a big trouble. Colorful and riotous? What kind of outrageous words are these? Chu Fei watched the other person walk out the door and shook his head slightly. It's better to be a tiger woman. This woman is too annoying, I can't stand it. After paying the bill, he turned around and walked out of the milk tea shop. As soon as he stepped outside, he received a call from Su Li. After much hesitation, he answered the phone. Are you okay? Are you all right? Su Li's worried voice came over the phone. I'm fine. That person didn't seem to think I was a bad guy, he just gave me a few simple lectures and let me go. I'm on my way right now. Upon hearing Chu Fei's reply, Suli let out a long sigh of relief. Thank goodness nothing happened to him. Where are you? I'll come and pick you up. I'm in the downtown area. 10 minutes later, Suli arrived at the street sign for the downtown area in his car. Boss, I'm really flattered that you came to pick me up yourself. As soon as he got in the car, Chu Fei switched into bandit mode. However, Suli's expression wasn't very good, and he wasn't in the mood to joke with him. What's wrong? Suli started the car and talked about what happened at the Zhao family. Suwu had previously mentioned the conditions, and Suli rejected them all. The Zhao family was also completely enraged and launched a full-scale battle against Kao Company. Most companies in the entire Jiangnan city severed all cooperation with Kao Company. As a result, Kao Company was considered to have entered a period of darkness. If they could turn things around, they would never have to look the Zhao family in the face again. If they couldn't, they would never be able to turn things around. After hearing Su Li's explanation, Chu Fei didn't say anything, but he already had a plan in mind. This Zhao family is really something. What do you think I should do now? Su Li asked with a gloomy face. That's nonsense. Besides, you don't lack money. The money I gave you before should be enough to support your company for a few months, right? Su Li couldn't help but give him a cold stare when she thought about the money on the card. She had sacrificed herself to get that money. By the way, can I ask, what is the new drug your company is researching for? Su Li took a deep breath. This is confidential and I can't tell you. The effect of the new drug is an absolute secret. Apart from the researchers, the president, and the chairman, the major shareholders don't know. Not to mention the other personnel in the company. However, what I can tell you is that if this drug is successfully researched, at least the whole world will import this drug from our company. The value can reach hundreds of billions or even more. It can make Kao Company become one of the top companies in the whole Daxia country in one fell swoop. Hearing Su Li's words, Chu Fei was also a little surprised. A new drug with such great benefits? If this gets out, I expect countless people will choose to acquire Kao Corporation at this time, or even bribe their researchers. Aren't you afraid that your researchers will be bribed by others? Upon hearing this, Su Li laughed. Bribe my people? In fact, they don't even know where my research base is. I'm not afraid to tell you that most of the research members in my research institute have not returned home for a year. Even their phone calls with their families are under our supervision. This is what Su Li is most relieved about, at least he doesn't have to worry about his researchers being bribed by outsiders. Chu Fei also understood that this tiger woman is very meticulous in her work and has even thought of this. While the two were talking, they had arrived at a villa. The villa was not large, covering only about 200 square meters. Apart from Su Li, there was no one else in the villa. After parking the car, Su Li said to Chu Fei with some fatigue, I'm going to go back to my room and take a nap, so find a room to stay in by yourself. Don't go into my room without my permission, got it? You bandit. Unexpectedly, Chu Fei refused with righteous words. I promised to protect you closely, so I will definitely fulfill this responsibility. From now on, you sleep in the bed and I'll sleep on the floor. Get out. Chapter 14, Invest 2 billion and invest in Kayao. The next morning. Su Li had just woken up from sleep when she smelled the aroma. Rubbing her still dimmed eyes, she opened the bedroom door. She saw 2 bowls of steaming noodles with a poached egg on the dining table downstairs. Chu Fei had just come out of the kitchen. Woke up? Hurry up and wash up for breakfast. Su Li pursed her lips. This was the first time a man had cooked for her. Great. She quickly went downstairs to wash up and came to the dining table. Looking at the steaming bowl of noodles, she couldn't help but salivate. I can't tell that you can cook. I thought you were just a rich second-generation heir. She laughed lightly. I can do too much, do you want to try? Chu Fei's mouth corners rose, looking at Su Li. The latter subconsciously covered her chest, and a blush appeared on her face. Go to hell. Bandit. Chu Fei laughed out loud and didn't say anything. After breakfast and a change of clothes, Chu Fei drove Su Li to the company. However, as soon as they arrived, they were called to a meeting in the chairman's conference room. Before entering the conference room, they could hear the voices of the major shareholders arguing. Su Li pushed open the door to the conference room with a cold face. Shareholders, from what I hear, you plan to have the company repurchase the shares you hold, right? While still outside the door, he he heard the major shareholders discussing who to sell their shares to. Now, almost all the companies in Jiangnan City, big and small, have refused to cooperate with them. The Zhao Group has even directly issued a statement targeting Kaiyou Company. Needless to say, all the companies related to the Zhao Group have terminated their contracts. Even if they are not related, they have also chosen to terminate their contracts in order to save face for the Zhao Group. Kaiyou Company is now in a difficult situation. President Su. Although I don't know how you negotiated with the chairman and the Zhao family, in terms of the current situation, we have no choice. Unless, you can tell us what drug we are researching. Then we can make a judgment as to whether we should sell our shares or make additional investments. A shareholder surnamed Wang spoke up. He was one of the older shareholders of Kaiyou Company and the investor who had initially invested in Kaiyou Company. Even he was not optimistic about the future of Kaiyou Company, let alone the others. Yes, President Su. Up until now, we don't even know the direction of the company's latest research, so what do you think we should choose? Another shareholder spoke up. Su Li sneered inwardly. Among these shareholders, she had no doubt that some had already been bought off by the Zhao family. Because before researching the latest drug, all shareholders signed a contract that they were not allowed to ask about the research direction and effects until the new drug was researched out. And this time, so many people spoke up, and she did not rule out the possibility that some people had already become Zhao's group. Since it is the case, then there is no choice. Several, does anyone want to sell their shares? I will buy them all at today's opening price. Recently, the stock price of Kaiyou Company has fallen straight down, and some shareholders have long since received the news and sold. As soon as the market opened this morning, the stock price dropped by nearly 10%. President Su, what you said is a bit unreasonable. The stock price has fallen so much, if you don't buy it at the original price, you are asking us to sell at a loss. No capitalist would do that, would they? A somewhat obese shareholder, wearing glasses, looked quite dissatisfied. After all, the stock price had fallen, and they had also lost money. So what do you shareholders mean? Su Li looked at the few shareholders present, his face a little cold. Father didn't come today, so I think he knows what's going on here. I guess he just wants me to handle things here. There's nothing else to it. We've already discussed it, and the company will repurchase it, and we won't take advantage of the company, so we can just go with yesterday's opening price. Su Li sneered. Shareholders, it seems you have already made up your minds? In that case, you can keep it, or go out and see if anyone else is willing to take it over. Given the current situation of Kaiyou Company, no one is going to take it over. Unless that person is a fool. Mr. Su, you're being unreasonable. It was agreed that if the company ran into trouble, the company would buy back the shares. Now you're going back on your word. We have a contract, after all. Are you saying that you want us to sue? This is not a good idea. As soon as the shareholder surnamed Wang opened his mouth, the other shareholders present immediately smiled. In fact, Su Li was right. All the shareholders present had already been bought off by the Zhao Group. The only reason they had come today was to sell their shares and get the research drug from Kaiyou. As long as they could get it out, each of them would receive a considerable sum of money. Moreover, the Zhao Group was willing to buy their shares at a high price. Unfortunately, Su Li is too stubborn to budge. Yes. We signed the contract, but let's not forget that the contract states that the shares will be repurchased at the opening price of the day. I think all shareholders have read the contract, right? Su Li's words effectively blocked the way out for several shareholders. The shareholders surnamed Wang's face also turned a bit ugly. They had come to negotiate, but they had been manipulated by the other party. If you shareholders want to sell, you need to hurry. Otherwise, once the company goes bankrupt, the shares you hold will be worthless. After saying this, Su Li turned and left the meeting room, leaving the major shareholders looking at each other. Back in her office, Su Li's face was very ugly. These guys are obviously bought off. They actually dared to try to get the research drug out of her. It seems that it's time for the company to clean up. However, once she funded the acquisition of the shares held by these shareholders, it seemed that the remaining funds would not last long. The thought of this made her head spin. My big president, what's wrong? Do you need my help? Su Li shook her head. It's nothing, I'm just a little worried about the company. Zhu Fei nodded and didn't say anything more. Sitting in his seat, he took out his phone and sent a simple text message. The text was very simple: invest 2 billion and invest in Jiangnan Kaiyou Company. Chapter 15, A Slap to Wake You Up. Noon. You can go out with me for a walk later, no need to drive. Suli put down the work in her hands. The company is still operating as usual, although there have been a lot of resignations, it has not affected the company as a whole. Is this your invitation to go on a date? Zhu Fei raised his eyebrows and looked at Suli with a smile. Suli gave him a cold glare and said, "Whatever you think." The two left the company and walked along the bustling street. The weather in September was neither hot nor cold. The breeze made Suli feel much better. "By the way, Bandit, do you have a girlfriend?" As soon as the words left her mouth, she regretted it the next second. For some reason, this question suddenly came to her mind. "No." "What, do you want to be my girlfriend?" "The requirements for being my girlfriend are not low, can you do it?" "Forget it, since you've asked, I can't refuse. I'll reluctantly let you be my girlfriend." Zhu Fei's face showed a hint of helplessness, and he let out a long sigh. Suli glared at him fiercely, "Dream on. There are enough people chasing me to circle the entire Jiangnan, do you think I would look at you?" "Who knows," Zhu Fei shrugged. "Whether you did it or not, you know in your heart." "Suli? Can you have some shame, on the street?" She was going crazy. This guy, always acting impolitely. Just as the two were bantering with each other, Zhu Fei suddenly felt a strong sense of crisis. His body hair stood on end at this moment, and he instantly pulled Suli into his arms, turning his head to look at the third-floor window in the distance. But there was no one at the window. However, Suli mistakenly thought that he was trying to feel her up. For a moment, her pretty face turned red, and she pushed him away angrily, shouting, "Bandit! Stop it!" Zhu Fei's brows were knitted together, and his gaze fixed on the third-floor window across the street. If he had not felt it wrong, the sense of crisis just now came from that window. From the time he had protected Suli in his arms to when he had turned his head to look over. However, it had taken a second, and the other party had been able to avoid it. This was enough to prove that the other party was no ordinary person. Held tightly in Zhu Fei's arms, Suli's face flushed as she felt the strong heartbeat of the other person. For some reason, she felt an unprecedented sense of security. It seemed that by leaning on this man's arms, any danger would approach her. "It's okay, it's fine." Zhu Fei slowly released his embrace, but Suli felt a little lost. When she came back to her senses, her face returned to normal. "Did something just happen?" Zhu Fei shook his head and grinned at her. "It's fine, I just want to feel up on you." Suli gave him a glare and said, "Go to hell." But Zhu Fei's heart was cold. He was thinking, is the other person here for me, or for Suli? If it was directed at him, then the other party would definitely show up again. But if it was directed at Suli, then it was unclear. His master had asked him to protect Suli, which meant that Suli would definitely be in danger. And now that the danger had come, it was time to see how to deal with it. Just then, Suli received a call from Fang Qing. "Hello? Qing. Su, where are you? I'm so bored. Come over and have a drink with me, okay? I'm at the Zhuiyuking bar." Fang Qing's voice came over the phone, a little drunk. "Okay, wait for me." Suli got into the car with Zhu Fei and drove to the bar. As soon as they entered, they saw Fang Qing sitting on the sofa. However, she wasn't in a good condition. She was drunk, and there was a man next to her who was groping her, but Fang Qing kept resisting. Suli quickly walked up to her and pulled the man away. "Who are you? What are you doing to my best friend?" The man was obviously drunk, too, and his breath reeked of alcohol. "Hey! Here comes another beauty. Come on, beautiful, have a drink with me." As he spoke, the man reached out to put his arm around Suli's neck. He even picked up a bottle of wine and pretended to pour it into Suli's mouth. Zhu Fei pinched the man's hand, his face cold. "Get lost." The man obviously lost his temper when his wrist was pinched. "Do you know who I am? Dare to touch me, I'll make sure you never leave this door today." The man shouted drunkenly at Zhu Fei. The bottle in his hand was unceremoniously smashed towards Zhu Fei's head. Everyone around saw it, but no one dared to step forward to stop it. Not for anything else, but because this guy was Su Hui, the son of the director of a certain bureau, and a regular at the bar. It was not uncommon for him to flirt with the salespeople in the bar, or any pretty woman he didn't know. "Dare you touch him?" But Zhu Fei was not used to indulging him. Before the other person's bottle could fall, he raised his hand and slapped the man hard in the face. Pop! The loud slap made many people present at the scene confused. And Su Hui was also awakened by this slap. Now, are you awake? Zhu Fei let go of his hand and stared at Su Hui with a cold expression. The latter shook his head, still a little dazed, and stared at Zhu Fei with a sinister expression. How dare you hit me? No one has ever dared to argue with him in this bar. Unexpectedly, he was actually beaten up on his own turf. How could he bear it? Are you going to leave on your own, or do I have to throw you out? Zhu Fei's tone was very calm. Su Hui laughed. He just laughed coldly. Fine. If you're so capable, don't leave. After saying that, he dragged his drunken body and left the bar. Su Li then sat next to Fong Qing and patted her back lightly. Why did you drink so much? Fong Qing burst into tears. Wow! That bastard Lin Shui broke up with me. I feel so bad. Fong Chang hugged Su Li, sniffling and crying uncontrollably. At this moment, the owner of the bar came out. Hey, guys! Hurry up and leave. That guy is someone you can't mess with. He's the son of the head of the law enforcement bureau in this area. He knows a lot of thugs. If you don't leave now, you won't be able to leave later. The owner was also a little worried. If these three don't leave, he won't need to open the bar. If there is a fight, he doesn't know how much damage he will suffer. Su Li looked at Fong Cheng in this state and couldn't stay any longer. Thank you, boss, we'll leave now. Then he gave Zhu Fei a wink, and the two of them helped Fong Qing to leave. However, as soon as they reached the door, Su Hui, who had been slapped by Zhu Fei, returned. This time, however, he was not alone. Behind him, there were at least a dozen small thugs, with dyed hair and a cigarette in their mouths. It's him! Su Hui looked at Zhu Fei with murderous intent in his eyes. Su Li saw this and took Fong Qing's hand and took a step back. Zhu Fei took a step forward and looked at the 10 or so thugs in front of him. That slap didn't wake you up, did it? Do you need 2 more slaps to wake you up? As soon as he finished speaking, one of the thugs spoke up. Damn it! How dare you speak to our brother Hui like that? Brothers, let's fuck him up. Chapter 16, you're pretty good at this. More than 10 thugs immediately rushed forward, ready to punch and kick Zhu Fei. Su Hui, on the other hand, stood to the side, smirking. He dared to hit me? I'll make him crawl out of here. But things never go as planned. The so-called brothers who rushed forward were all knocked out by Zhu Fei in the blink of an eye. Within a few punches and kicks, more than 10 people were already lying on the ground. Each one was lying on the ground, wailing in pain. Su Hui had not even had time to react before the gang he had recruited had already fallen. If it weren't for the fact that these people had followed him for quite some time, he would have suspected that they were actors hired by the other party and could not take a beating. What could he do in the current situation? Run. He immediately started to run. However, Zhu Fei had already anticipated his movements. As soon as he lifted his leg, a huge force came from his back, and he was kicked directly to the ground. You didn't listen to what I just told you, did you? And you want someone to fix me? Zhu Fei walked up to him, squatted down, and looked at Su Hui with a smile on his face. Do you know who I am? Let me tell you, my father is Su Lin. If you dare to hit me, do you believe I will let my father arrest you? Up to this point, Su Hui still hasn't figured out the situation. He even tried to intimidate the guy in front of him with his father. Unfortunately, his threat meant nothing to Zhu Fei. I'm so scared. As soon as the words left his mouth, Zhu Fei slapped Su Hui's face. Pop. A loud slap. Immediately, Su Hui's face turned red, and 5 fingerprints were clearly visible. Do you know what's wrong? Su Hui gritted his teeth and mumbled a few words, fuck you. Before he could finish the third word, another slap came. Oops. You're still cursing, aren't you? How can you be so uncouth? Su Hui's mind was racing with a million wild horses. Old man. Pop. Another slap. You're still young, and you're not married yet, are you? I'm not even an old man yet, so who the hell are you? Zhu Fei swung his fists left and right, slapping him furiously. In just a few minutes, Su Hui's face had turned into a pig's head. Zhu Fei saw that he had fainted from the beating and stopped. He shook his palm, which still hurt a little, and said, "Next time I see you, I'll beat you again." Then he came to Su Li's side. Su Li looked at Su Hui, who was lying on the ground and had become a pig's head, and her eyes were full of sympathy. This guy picked on the wrong person, and had to provoke Chu Fei. "Let's go." The three of them took a taxi and returned to the villa with Fong Qing. Su Li finally managed to put Fong Qing to bed, and she was exhausted. Chu Fei, on the other hand, was wandering around the living room aimlessly. "Are you very idle?" Seeing Chu Fei's carefree appearance, Su Li couldn't help but get angry. This guy, he doesn't know how to help. What else? As he spoke, Chu Fei walked to the corner of the living room. He pointed his finger at the camera in the corner of the living room and asked, "Did you install that camera?" Su Li glanced at it and said, "Yes, what's wrong?" Chu Fei shook his head to indicate that it was fine. But he felt that there seemed to be something wrong with that camera. The sense of crisis he encountered on the street today was most likely not directed at him, but at Su Li. As for the reason, he was not sure either. "How many cameras are there in your house and where are they located?" Chu Fei asked again. Su Li leaned back on the sofa and thought about it. "There are 4, 2 outside, 1 in the living room and 1 in the hallway." "Why? What do you want to know for?" She was a little puzzled. But Chu Fei didn't say anything, and went to the location of the cameras that Su Li had mentioned. There was nothing unusual about the 2 cameras outside. The camera in the living room looked similar. However, when he arrived in the hallway, there was an additional small object with a red dot on the round camera. He got a stool and took the small object off. His eyes narrowed slightly. A bug. Unexpectedly, it really was targeted at Su Li. There was actually a bug in the house. And it was placed in such a hidden place that no one would normally notice it. It seems that there should be more than one in this villa. After a hard squeeze, the bug was crushed. "What is that in your hand?" Chu Fei threw the crushed bug on the table and said, "Bug, there should be more than one in this house." When he heard the word bug, Su Li felt a chill down his back. "Someone actually planted a bug in my own home? You have to understand, I always check the surveillance cameras. I haven't seen anyone enter my villa on the cameras either." "You're not joking, are you? How could that be?" Su Li couldn't believe it. "Do I look like I'm joking?" Chu Fei looked at her seriously. The latter remained silent. "I'll look for it, see if there are any more." Chu Fei began searching the room for more bugs. He found one in the kitchen, one behind the TV, and one under the router. Half an hour later, Chu Fei threw the crushed ones on the table. There were as many as 6 or 7, and this was still without him searching the room. Perhaps there are more in the room. So many. Su Li stared at the listening devices on the table in disbelief. "Then I don't know. Now I'm going to your room to see if there are any others." As soon as Chu Fei said he was going to her room, Su Li became a little anxious. "No. I'll go with you." For some reason, Su Li was a little panicked. Chu Fei looked at her like this and laughed lightly. "What? Is there something you don't want me to see?" Su Li's face suddenly turned red. "No." The two walked into the room. Fong Cheng was drunk and sleeping very deeply, not at all waking up. This would also be Chu Fei's first time entering a woman's bedroom. There was a faint fragrance in the air. In the white patterned wardrobe next to him, there were different styles of clothes hanging. Chu Fei opened the closet and searched for a while, and found a bug at the top of the closet. Then he squatted down next to the bedside table, and just as he was about to reach out and pull open the cabinet, Su Li exclaimed in alarm. "Don't move!" Chu Fei looked back at her, a little puzzled. "What?" Su Li endured the embarrassment, shook her head, and bit her lips tightly. "It's fine, you can open it." After saying that, she turned her head directly. Chu Fei cut a sound, and then opened the closet. It wasn't a big deal if he didn't open it, but as soon as he opened it, he froze in place. The closet was full of 7 or 8 sets of intimate clothing. And they were all made of lace. There were white, black, red, and purple ones. And he even saw a very special set of 3-in-1 underwear. He could imagine what it would look like on Su Li. Chu Fei came back to his senses, beaming from ear to ear. "I can't tell from looking at you that you're quite the playboy." Chapter 17, Sudden Investment. Zhao Manor. "What did you say? You never took in a criminal named Chu Fei? Are you sure you didn't make a mistake?" Zhao Wei said coldly over the phone, his face dark with anger. He had thought that with Jiang Ning stepping in, Xu Fei would either be dead or in jail. But he had never expected that after asking every police station in the city, there was no such person. Xiaodong, I know about your son's case. I won't need you to tell me about it. If there was, I would have found someone to deal with him without you having to say a word. But we really haven't received this prisoner. As he listened to the other end of the line, Zhao Wei's face grew increasingly ugly. I understand, thank you, Commissioner Wang, I'll treat you to dinner next time. After hanging up the phone, he kicked the stool in front of him. Damn it! Why would Jiang Ning give that kid a break? He couldn't understand why Jiang Ning, who was seen by everyone as fair and impartial, had let the murderer Xu Fei go. Could it be that the other party was his illegitimate child? But then, the two didn't look alike at all, and Jiang Ning had hardly had any black marks since taking office. He wouldn't leave a stain on himself just for a small security guard, would he? Zhao Wei just couldn't figure out why. What's going on? Lu Sui walked into the room with a tired face, his dark circles under his eyes looking particularly heavy. He hadn't slept for 2 nights, and it wasn't until this morning, when his son was buried, that he finally got some rest. That kid, Jiang Ning let him go. He looked so angry. Let him go? Are you sure? Lu Sui couldn't believe it either. A murderer in Jiang Ning's hands would either go to jail or be shot. But she never expected that the other person would be let go unharmed. I have already asked all the police stations in the city, and several police chiefs have told me that they have not received an inmate called Xu Fei. Moreover, they have not received any orders from Jiang Ning. If this is not being released, what is it? Lu Sui was silent. Her son was killed, and she absolutely could not tolerate the murderer going unpunished. I want revenge. Her face was sinister. Let's start with Su Li. Isn't he Su Li's personal bodyguard? Then let's move against Su Li first. Use Su Li to threaten him. Zhao Wei was silent after hearing this. This is not a bad idea. But the consequence is that it has to be done cleanly. If it is discovered, then the people behind Su Wu will definitely not let it go. Find someone. Do it cleanly. In the villa. Xu Fei and Su Li were sitting on the sofa in the living room, looking at the dozen or so crushed listening devices on the table. Neither of their faces looked good. Have you provoked someone you shouldn't have? The other party was able to sneak into your home without making a sound and plant the bug. Xu Fei frowned slightly. Since the other party was able to avoid surveillance and enter Su Li's room to plant the bug, it means that the other party is definitely no ordinary person. No. In Jiangnan, I haven't offended anyone. Except for the Zhao family. But before Zhao died, the Zhao family would not do such a thing. Su Li also couldn't understand who would actually cause trouble for her. They even went so far as to install so many listening devices in her villa. Do you remember when we were on the street? Xu Fei suddenly spoke up. Su Li was slightly taken aback, and her pretty face showed a little confusion. Actually, I didn't mean to take advantage of you. Upon hearing this, she gave Xu Fei a dirty look. Then why? She didn't understand. If it wasn't for that, then what was it for? Since I'm your personal bodyguard, I have a keen sense of danger. When I was with you on the street, I sensed that someone would do something to you. It's just that when I checked, the other person should have left, so I didn't catch him. Upon hearing Xu Fei's explanation, Su Li only felt a burst of fear. Everyone is afraid of unknown dangers. Are you serious? Xu Fei nodded slightly. Why would I lie to you? Just eat your tofu? I've eaten it before. Su Li kicked Xu Fei hard. Bandit. Die. Just then, Su Li received a phone call from the company secretary. Hello, Mr. Su. Someone wants to. The secretary sounded very agitated and her speech was a bit stammering. Su Li couldn't hear clearly. What happened? Someone wants to invest in our company, the amount is 2 billion. He said he wants to meet with you to discuss. When she heard this, Su Li suddenly stood up from the sofa. Her pretty face was full of disbelief. She never thought that at this time, someone would actually choose to invest in her company. And it's 2 billion. You have to know that once this capital enters the company, Kaio Company will be completely self-sufficient. It will even be able to expand the original factory. In that case, even if other companies in Jiangnan City do not cooperate with them, she can completely look for cooperation with other large companies in the city. There is no need to give the Zhao family any face. Now. Su Li's tone seemed to have a little more excitement. No. He said he would meet at the company at 3 p.m. tomorrow. The secretary's words made Su Li's heart, which had been hanging in the balance, fall. Although it was still unclear which company would invest in his company, this was tantamount to sending charcoal in the snow. Just then, Xu Fei poured a bucket of cold water on the side. Don't get too happy too soon. You did say before that these shareholders of your company are no good. Aren't they going to sell their shares? Call them directly for a meeting tomorrow morning and see if these people are going to sell. If they are willing, just buy all their shares. In this way, if your company has a chance to rise again, you won't have to look at their faces at all. Upon hearing Xu Fei's reminder, Su Li's eyes also lit up. This is an opportunity to pool shares. Once the research is successful, then KO Company will completely turn over a new leaf. I understand. Thank you, bandit. Xu Fei just smiled and didn't say anything. A 2 billion investment is nothing to him. Whether or not he can get his money back is irrelevant. He just didn't want to see this woman frowning and scowling over the company's affairs, because that would cause wrinkles. But who would invest in my company at a time like this? Did the other party have a screw loose? Upon hearing this, Xu Fei's face turned black. This was an indirect way of calling him stupid. But of course, he would never tell this woman that he had asked someone to invest. Maybe. The other party is a fool. Chapter 18, Repurchase of Shares. The next morning. Fangqing finally sobered up and bid farewell to Su Li and Xu Fei. Xu Fei, on the other hand, brought Su Li to the company and called a shareholders' meeting. This time, Su Wu also came forward. Because he had also heard that someone was going to invest in the company. However, apart from the secretary, only Su Li, Xu Fei, and Su Wu knew about it. None of the major shareholders knew that someone was investing in KO Company, and even if they did, they would never guess that it would be such a large sum of money. I wonder how the shareholders are considering it. Are you planning to keep the shares you have and have children, or are you planning to let the company repurchase them? Su Li looked at the major shareholders present with a cold expression on her face. The major shareholders glanced at each other. In fact, they now only had two options. Either sell their shares to the Zhao Group, or repurchase them from the company. Obviously, the price would be more or less the same no matter who they sold to. The Zhao Group is not stupid, they won't give them much more than the opening price. President Su, you also know the current situation of the company. Even if we want to sell, do you have enough funds to take over? Chairman, what do you think? In fact, Su Wu actually said it was the chairman, but in fact, the company's affairs had long been handed over to Su Li for full disposal. He just wants to enjoy his retirement at home. This matter depends on what you all think. I have already handed over the company's affairs to President Su for full disposal. If you want to sell your shares, I naturally won't say anything. As soon as Su Wu spoke, the major shareholders present all understood what he meant. It was clear that Su Wu intended to help Su Li and take back the shares they held. In that case, I wonder what the price is. Su Dong, we won't say much more. The people from the Zhao Group have contacted us and are willing to pay us 10% more than the highest price for the shares this month. The shareholder surnamed Wang also didn't hide it and said it directly. Upon hearing this, the faces of Su Wu and Su Li both turned a little ugly. They had never expected that the Zhao Group would play such a trick on them. It seemed that the other party was determined to swallow KO Company. We are all old friends, and we have also received a lot of dividends from the company. It is fine not to earn this black-hearted money. The shares will be sold to the company at the highest price this month. I wonder what Mr. Su thinks. The other shareholder also spoke up. Just as Su Wu was hesitating, Su Li spoke up first. Yes. Su Wu was a little surprised. Where did this girl get so much money? You have to know that the highest price of the month happened to be during the period of Su Li and Zhao An's engagement. During that period of time, the stock price of KO Company can be said to have skyrocketed. If it is based on the highest price, then the combined shares of these major shareholders would be at least more than 200 million. Are you serious, President Su? Are you really willing? Shareholder Wang obviously didn't believe it. 200 million yuan in capital, unless you sell half of KO Company. Do you think I'm joking? Su Li's face was calm, and there was no sign of him joking at all. In this way, the major shareholders chose to sell their shares to the company, and they themselves got their share of the money. As a result, all the company's shares were in the hands of Su Li and Su Wu. Su Li alone took 60%, while Su Wu took 30%. The remaining 10% were in the hands of some shareholders. In Su Li's office, Xu Fei received a phone call. Hello? Who is this? Looking at the unfamiliar number, he had no idea who was calling him. Have you forgotten me so quickly? Where are you? I'll come find you. Listening to the gentle yet flirtatious voice on the other end of the line, Xu Fei was momentarily stunned. Isn't this the blind date that my father arranged for me? Why is she calling me? Judging from her aloof manner, he thought she would treat him like a stranger. It's you. What do you want? Why don't you just not come over? It's not convenient here. Xu Fei looked at it and politely declined. This cold woman came to see him, and there was definitely nothing good about it. Don't you want to meet me? You said it yourself, you want a colorful saw, and I feel like I have the kind of flavor you want right now. Upon hearing this, Xu Fei almost spit out a mouthful of water. What the hell does it mean to be colorful and saw? Did I say that? He thought about it and seemed to have said it. However, he didn't think the woman would take it seriously. Wait a minute, let me calm down. Xu Fei quickly said something and then hung up the phone. Taking a deep breath, he still felt that he could not let this woman come over. But before he could make a phone call, Su Li came back. Looking at him with a smile on his face, it's all right now, all the major shareholders have recovered their shares. We just need to talk to the investor in the afternoon. Do you think the other party will invest? Su Li was full of joy, but also a little nervous. What if the other party doesn't know the current situation of the company and decides not to invest? Don't worry, the other party will definitely invest. Xu Fei smiled and replied. I'll take your word for it then. Su Li's eyes showed a hint of gratitude. Just then, Xu Fei's phone rang. Hello? Where are you? I've been waiting for your call for a few minutes. Xu Fei's face suddenly turned a little embarrassed. I need to take this. Su Li actually heard the woman's voice on the other end of the phone, and her face, which had been full of a smile, suddenly became calm. Xu Fei didn't feel anything amiss, and left the office to go outside. I said, what do you really want? He was a little depressed. Could it be that this blind date really wants to find herself a boyfriend? I said, I have the feeling you want. You said it yourself. Where are you? I'll come over to see you. Seeing how the other person was acting, Xu Fei knew that this woman would never give up until she saw him. I'm downstairs at Kaio Company, come on over. After hanging up the phone, he let out a sigh of relief. Then he walked into the office and said to his boss, I'm going downstairs to meet a friend, I'll be right back. Suit yourself. Su Li didn't even look up, just said coldly. Xu Fei muttered to himself, I haven't done anything to offend her, why is she acting so cold? After Xu Fei went downstairs, Su Li stood in front of the office's French windows, looking at Xu Fei downstairs. She felt a little sour in her heart. The friend this guy was talking about was probably his girlfriend. What was the person he liked like? Just then, Su Li saw a luxurious red Ferrari parked downstairs at the company. A woman in leggings and a red bodysuit got out of the car. The outfit tightly wrapped her perfect figure, with all the right curves. Chapter 19, Family Visit. Downstairs. When Xu Fei saw Wang Xie getting out of the car, his eyes widened. This woman has changed too much, hasn't she? With this outfit, I wonder how many men she'll charm. This figure, these eyes. Is a perfect beauty. What do you think? Does this outfit suit your taste? Be my boyfriend, you can do whatever you want to me. Wang Xie had charming eyes, and she came forward and took Xu Fei's hand. Su Li upstairs saw everything clearly, and the sour feeling in her heart could no longer be tolerated. Unexpectedly, this guy actually liked this kind of woman. She turned her head away, not wanting to look anymore. However, a voice in her heart kept reminding her to keep looking. She looked back carefully again, looking down. No. You're making it seem like I'm greedy for your beauty. I'm not that kind of person, you know. Xu Fei broke free from Wang Xie's grasp and stood to the side. His face was covered in helplessness. How is this woman like gumdrops, which cannot be shaken off? So what do you want? How about we be more direct? I brought my ID. It's not very good in broad daylight, but if you like it, it's fine. Wang Xie was not embarrassed at all, but Xu Fei was full of shock. Is this woman crazy? She's really willing to sacrifice herself for the family and give herself to a stranger she doesn't know. That's it. I've laid my cards on the table. I'm just a security guard, so don't look for me. We're not suited for each other. After saying this, Xu Fei was about to turn around and leave. However, the latter grabbed him by the hand. Whether or not we're suited for each other, we'll never know unless we try. Just like whether or not the colors match, isn't this just right? These words directly thundered across Xu Fei's face. No, where did you learn such a cruel remark? A nice young lady saying such things will be misunderstood. Wang Xie's face turned black. What do you want? I did what you said, colorful and saw. Now you're not satisfied. You tell me, I'll change. What style do you really like? Wang Xie is not the kind of woman who is casual, not everyone is enough to make her like this. But Xu Fei is really different. Although she didn't know what attracted her to this man, she felt that she had done enough for him. No. To be reasonable, I didn't say I like you, did I? You go back, mortal woman, not suitable for me. Xu Fei shook his head slightly and turned towards the building. He had just taken a few steps when he turned back. Right. Any investment intentions? This company is short of money. Maybe if you invest a little, I'll consider it. After saying that, he left. Wang Xie looked at the tall building in front of her, her eyebrows slightly furrowed. Kaio Company? Isn't this the small company targeted by the Zhao Group? The entire Jiangnan knows that the Zhao Group has launched a series of commercial battles against Kaio Company. However, her Juanhao Group is not involved. She doesn't need to look at the face of any company. However, since this guy asked her to invest in this company, it means that this company may have some value. She immediately took out her phone and called her secretary. Xiaogu, take out 500 million and invest in Kaio Company. Yes, President Wang. Watching Xu Fei's departing background, Wang Xie's mouth slightly rose up. Since you work as a security guard in this company, then next time I won't have to talk to you on the phone. After saying that, she turned around and got into the car, and with a pedal on the gas, she drove off into the distance. Suli upstairs looked at the other person with a complex look in her eyes. He sat in his office chair, a little dazed, not knowing what to think. Boss, I'm back. Suli didn't look up, just grunted. Boss, what's wrong with you? Are you sick? Should we go to the hospital? Seeing Suli's listless appearance, Xu Fei said from the side. You're sick. Your whole family is sick. Scumbag. Suli angrily scolded him directly. Xu Fei was stunned by her scolding. No. Be reasonable, I didn't provoke you, why are you scolding me? And you called me a scumbag, it's not like I did anything. Suli simply ignored him and went back to attending to the company's affairs. And Xu Fei, not wanting to be a nuisance, sat on the sofa and played with his phone. It was nearing noon. Xu Fei received a text message. Young master, I've already arrived in Jiangnan, do you want to meet? Looking at the text message, Xu Fei knew that he had to go and meet his butler. There were some things that the butler knew better than Jiang Ning. Hey boss, can I take half a day off? Do whatever you want, go wherever you want. It's best if you never come back, scumbag. Pa. Suli snapped back. Obviously, she had not yet recovered from what had just happened. Xu Fei had a dark face. Tell me, where am I a scumbag? If I were a scumbag, would I have given you so much money? You can call me a scumbag, but give me back my money. I'm almost broke now, I can't even afford a set of clothes. Dream on. No way. Suli remembered his words. I really am. I have something to do, I'll be back in a bit. By the way, don't leave the company if you're not busy. Xu Fei gave her a piece of advice before leaving. Since someone was targeting Suli, the girl definitely couldn't go out casually. If there is any danger and I am not by her side, something might happen. Mind your own business. Get lost. Suli shouted angrily. Xu Fei left, speeding off in Suli's car towards the airport. Suli looked at the time, it was lunchtime. She still had a meeting with the investor in the afternoon, so she would not go home. After thinking about it, she decided to go downstairs to the noodle shop to grab a bite. She would just be downstairs, so nothing should happen. It's so close, just across the street. Grabbing her bag, she went downstairs. The sun was shining, not too hot. But as soon as she got downstairs, she was being watched. Several pairs of eyes on a black car by the curb fell on her. "Boss, the target has appeared, she's alone. Should we do it now?" A low voice came over the phone. "Do it, remember, be quick." Chapter 22 Teams? A luxury hotel. "Young master. You haven't changed, you're still as handsome as ever after all these years." In front of Chu Fei was a man with some gray hair who looked to be in his 50s. This was Chu Kai, the butler of the courtyard where Chu Fei was staying. "Young master, I've always been this handsome. But I'm curious, what's going on with the family lately? Why did you come in person?" In fact, Chu Fei didn't intend for Chu Kai to come in the first place. He just wanted the family to send someone over to invest in Su Li's company. But unexpectedly, the person who came was the butler Chu Kai. The family has been in a bit of trouble recently. However, the family head and the several elders are making preparations, so there won't be any problems in the short term. "Young master, you don't need to worry about this. This time, the family head said that you may need to pay more attention recently. It seems that the Phoenix has sent someone into the Great Xia." Upon hearing this, Chu Fei's eyes slightly narrowed, and a cold aura burst out of him. The Phoenix is a very powerful family abroad, and they control one of the world's strongest secret forces. The members of this force are all very powerful, and they specialize in using dark methods against rival families. However, he never imagined that the other party would dare to enter Daxia. Did they come here for me? Or is it to target someone else in the family? Chu Kai shook his head, indicating that he was not sure. As far as the current situation is concerned, he is also not sure of the other party's intentions. Even if the family relies on family intelligence, they are temporarily unable to find out. "I understand. If you hear anything, remember to let me know." "Yes, master." "Oh, master, the master also asked me to ask you if you have any crushes." Upon hearing this, Chu Fei's face immediately turned black. Crushes? The kind of person Wang Xie is? He thinks about it and finds it terrifying. This woman has too many thoughts, and for someone like this, he can only stay away from her with respect. "No. I'm still young, and he wants to hold a grandchild, so just wait a few years." Hearing Chu Fei's reply, Chu Kai could only smile and remain silent. Just then, Chu Fei's phone rang. Looking at the unfamiliar number on the screen, his brows furrowed slightly. However, he still pressed the answer button. "Hello?" A low, deep male voice came from the other end of the line. "Chu Fei, right?" Chu Fei was a little puzzled by the unfamiliar voice on the other end. "Chu Fei." Next, he heard Su Li's voice with a hint of a sob. Chu Fei instantly stood up from his seat, and his eyes instantly grew cold. "Did you hear me clearly? I don't think you're unfamiliar with this, right? Your boss, I've kidnapped him. Now I'll give you two options, either come alone to the old factory in the south of the city, or you can call the police, and I'll kill him." When he heard this, Chu Fei understood that the other party was targeting him, not Su Li. "Don't touch her, I'm coming over now." Since the other party's target wasn't Su Li, then Su Li was still safe for the time being. I just love dealing with smart people." The phone was hung up, and Chu Fei's eyes clearly revealed a hint of murderous intent. "It's coming for me? Is it someone from the Phoenix? If so, then the other party's intelligence system is too strong." However, he couldn't understand why something had happened less than half an hour after he had just left. Didn't he tell her not to leave the company? "Young master, what's wrong?" Seeing that Chu Fei's face looked a little off, Chu Kai asked. "I came over to have dinner with you. Someone has kidnapped the target of my protection." Upon hearing this, a fine layer of cold sweat broke out on Chu Kai's forehead. Having dinner with him led to the kidnapping of the young master's target? Isn't this clearly saying that it is indirectly related to me? "Young master, don't worry, I will contact those people in Jiangnan right now. At all costs, we must rescue your target. With the Chu family's capabilities, rescuing a kidnapped person is a completely effortless matter." "That's not necessary. The target is me, I can go there myself." Chu Fei got up and left the hotel. After he left, Chu Kai let out a sigh of relief. He then hurriedly took out his phone and called Jiang Ning. At the moment, Jiang Ning was in his office, sipping tea and reading the latest news. In his current position, he had a lot of free time. Unless there was a major change in Jiangnan, he would not be busy. At the moment, a call came in on his personal phone. Looking at the number, he quickly got up from his seat. Butler Kai? Why are you calling me? You're joking, the young master's butler is calling him personally. This must be something big. You already know what happened to the young master in Jiangnan. He has a target to protect in Jiangnan, you know that, right? Jiang Ning's face immediately became tense. He knew about this, and he knew very well from his previous meeting with the young master. The target is the president of Kao Company, Su Li. However, the young master also said that he didn't need to get involved in the business war. I know, what's wrong, Butler Kai? Has something happened to the young master? His mood suddenly became tense. If something happened to the young master in Jiangnan, he, the number one person in Jiangnan, would no longer have a job to do. That's not it. Something happened to the young master's target, and he was kidnapped. Right now, use all the connections you can to investigate the movements of the other party. Chu Kai's words gave Jiang Ning a slight sigh of relief. However, his heart was still very nervous. After all, the young master's target was 100 times more important than himself. Yes, I understand. I'll investigate right away. Meanwhile, Xu Fei had already driven straight to the south of the city. The south of the city was the old factory district of Jiangnan City. Before the city was fully developed, it was home to many factories. However, at the request of the state, all factories were moved outside the city to ensure air quality and environmental protection. Therefore, the old city is now in the development stage, but no real estate companies have come to take over yet. The surrounding area has become a gathering place for many small gangs and petty forces. While Chu Fei was heading to the south of the city, another group of people had also arrived in the south of the city. Who are these people? On the top floor of an old building in the south of the city, 3 burly men stood next to the fence, their eyes looking into the distance. At their feet, there was also a black handbag, which looked very heavy. I don't know either. Originally, this girl wasn't supposed to be our target? Could it be that the boss sent someone else? One of the men with a scar on his face was full of doubts. It shouldn't be like this, right? But this time, that guy was actually not here, which is a bit strange. Last time, I almost got discovered by him. That kid is terrifying. Chapter 21. Someone opened fire. Why don't you, Lohei, go ask what's going on? I don't think these people are very good. They shouldn't be the ones the boss sent. I feel like it might just be a coincidence. The one speaking was the leader of the 3, Lao Wu. They had received a mission from the bigwigs above them to kidnap Su Li, the president of Kao Company in Jiangnan City. It would be best to bring him back alive, as he would be very useful. But they didn't expect that there would be a master guarding the target. Lao Wu had prepared to make his move last time, thinking that with his own strength, he could easily subdue him. But he didn't expect that the target would discover his presence so quickly. So in the past 2 days, the 3 of them have been looking for an opportunity. Finally, they waited until the target went out for something, and Su Li went out alone. Before they could make their move, they saw the target being kidnapped into a car. The 3 of them drove all the way, following the car that kidnapped Su Li, all the way to the south of the city. No! Why do I have to go? Can't you see those guys across the street have knives? I'm small, I can't take a few knives. The one talking was Laohei. His name was Laohei, but he wasn't black, he was a bit skinny and looked weak. However, the 3 of them were notorious on the battlefield of the South Tower. If not notorious, they were feared. They had killed countless small leaders. As for the big bosses, it was not up to the 3 of them to kill them. In terms of the 3 men's strength, they could deal with the small-time crooks below without even using a gun. Why don't we go and take a look together? These are just a few small-time crooks, they can be dealt with in one punch, just like beating up a chicken. The old Su on the side also spoke up. The 3 of them glanced at each other and nodded. Then they walked towards the old factory with their black handbags. Inside the old factory, Su Li was tied to a stool. On the table next to him, a few punks were playing a game of Fight the Landlord. 1-3. King Blast. Can't you fucking play? I get a 3 and you get a King Blast? I'm happy with it, what's wrong? The punks were having a great time playing the game. On the other side, on an abandoned machine, a bald man was swinging a dagger in his hand. A long scar ran across his head, showing that he was definitely a ruthless person. He is also the leader of several people and is known as Scar in Jiangnan City. He often works for the Zhao family and is also a fierce general under Lu Sui. Under normal circumstances, Lu Sui would not use him. Pay attention to me. According to the time, that kid should be here soon. It is said that that kid is a martial artist, so don't be cocky and just kill him with a bunch of knives. Scar said in a cold tone as he dropped the dagger into his hand. Suli, who was tied to a stool with a rag over her eyes, could hear but not see. She heard every word Scarface said. For a moment, she felt an overwhelming sense of tension. What if Chu Fei really came? On the one hand, she hoped that Chu Fei wouldn't come, but on the other, she wanted Chu Fei to appear quickly. Conflicting thoughts kept racing through her mind. Just then, 3 strangers appeared at the gate of the old factory. Everyone dropped what they were doing and grabbed the machetes that had been lying around. Excuse me, guys. This place is taken. Want to try somewhere else? One of Scar's henchmen pointed his machete at the 3 people approaching. These were none other than the 3 black guys. Guys, don't get me wrong. I just want to ask you something, and then we'll leave, no questions asked. Wu chuckled and pulled a wad of cash out of his pocket and tossed it over. Scarface frowned slightly as he watched. These 3 people are quite accommodating. Just ask and leave quickly after. Upon hearing this, the 3 of them glanced at each other. Were you sent by Brother Yi? Brother Yi? Scarface frowned. No. You've got the wrong people, so just go. He waved his hand, indicating for the 3 of them to leave quickly. However, the expression in the eyes of the 3 of them, Lao Wu, grew cold. If Yigu didn't send them, then they must be enemies of the woman. But daring to lay hands on their prey was a sign of disrespect. If that wasn't the case, then they should leave. This woman was wanted by our boss by name. If you don't want trouble, I advise you to leave quickly. While he was talking, Lao Hei and the other 2 had placed the handbag on the ground. Scarface looked at the handbag the other person was carrying, and his expression instantly became tense. He knew very well what was in the other person's black handbag. Guys, this isn't a good idea. As he spoke, he took out a black pistol from his waist. The dark barrel was pointed at Lao Wu and the other 2. He hadn't planned to use such a thing. After all, in the Great Xia, except for special departments, it was forbidden for ordinary people to possess weapons. But he was also just being cautious. Unexpectedly, he really ran into it. Brother, are you sure you want to do this? In the meantime, Lao Hei put down the handbag and raised his hands high. It looked like he was going to surrender. But no one saw that there was a razor blade caught between his fingers. If you leave now, we'll pretend nothing happened. If you fire, I don't think you'll be able to leave. Lao Hei was smiling, as if he didn't care at all about being pointed at with a gun. Lao Wu and Lao Su also had their hands raised high, expressionless. Scaring me? I know what's in that bag of yours. Don't push me. Otherwise, one of you will definitely fall. As soon as he finished speaking, Lao Hei suddenly moved his wrist. Scarface was also an old man who had been around for a long time, and it was definitely not by luck that he had survived. As soon as the other person's wrist moved, he pulled the trigger. Pop. Bang. The blade pierced directly into Scar's throat. Blood kept spurting out along the bloody trail. His eyes stared fixedly at the 3 people in front of him. Lao Hei was not doing much better. As soon as he made his move, he desperately twisted his body. However, no matter how fast he was, he could not compare to the speed of a bullet. The bullet pierced his arm directly, and blood gushed out. Do it! Scar's brothers, seeing that their boss had been killed, went crazy and rushed towards the 3 of them, not caring about their lives. At this point, Lao Hei didn't need to do anything. Just these 10 or so punks, Lao Wu and Lao Su were enough. And not far from the factory, Chu Fei was speeding towards this direction. When he heard the gunshot, he was shocked. What's going on? Why did someone shoot? Chapter 22, Sorry, I'm late. A few minutes later. Inside the old factory, there were several bodies lying in a mess. Lao Wu and Lao Su both shook their wrists and threw the blood-stained machetes aside. Lao Hei walked up, looking aggrieved. I told you, I can't carry this on my own, but you didn't believe me. If I came down here alone, you 2 would definitely have to collect my body. Lao Wu glanced at him and said, "You're still my best friend even if you're not a bragger." "Okay, Lao Su, take the woman and go back to hand in the task." Su Li, who was tied to the stool, trembled slightly. The gunshot just now really startled her. The heavy smell of blood in the air made her stomach churn. As a medical researcher, she was very sensitive to the smell of blood. "Let's go, don't waste time. This place should be discovered soon." Lao He also spoke up. Just as Su was walking towards Su Li, a loud screeching noise came from the brakes. The three of them turned around and looked towards the door. They didn't know when Chu Fei had already stood in the doorway. Looking at the corpse on the ground, his face sank. Looking at the three of them again, he was full of confusion in his heart. What happened? What the hell just happened? The moment he saw Chu Fei, Lao Wu's face changed. It's him! He knew very well that this man was the one who found him last time. Unexpectedly, the other party also came. "Who are you?" As he spoke, Chu Fei took a step closer to the three of them. At this moment, Lao Wu also calmed down, and he looked at Chu Fei with a somewhat gloomy expression. "Brother! This has nothing to do with you. Let us go, just tell us what you want." He knew very well the strength of the man in front of him. The other party was merely the bodyguard by the woman's side. As long as he gave him sufficient conditions, he could completely turn the other party against him. Fighting head-on was not a good choice. After all, the three of them combined were not necessarily his match. "Is that so? Do you know that she is the one I need to protect?" And Lao Su, who was by Su Li's side, narrowed his eyes slightly. "Brother, I know you are not ordinary. But I don't think you will let this woman die in front of you, right?" At some point, Lao Su had a dagger in his hand, which he pressed against Su Li's neck. The sharp blade cut Su Li's white neck, and a trace of blood slowly flowed out. If Chu Fei dares to move, he will cut open Su Li's main artery without hesitation. Chu Fei stopped in his tracks and looked at the three people in front of him with cold eyes. "Who do you people work for? You killed these people, didn't you?" He was also very puzzled. It seemed that these people who were killed were not part of the same organization as these three people. Moreover, the target of these three people was not himself, but Su Li. As for these people who were killed, the target might be himself. At that moment, he suddenly thought of the incident when he and Su Li met on the street. That sudden sense of crisis might have been brought about by the three people in front of him. And the target was Su Li, not himself. As for the person who kidnapped Su Li, the target was himself. Yes. But we don't know them. It's just that they kidnapped the person we want, and they won't give him up, so we had to take action. You're a little late. Lao Wu took a deep breath and his hand reached for his waist. Although they had never met before, just by looking at the aura of the guy in front of him, he knew that the other party was definitely no good. Sure enough, after listening to the other party's words, Chu Fei already guessed the result. There must have been a misunderstanding between the two sides. But that was good, at least it helped him solve some of his problems. However, as he watched the other party reach for his waist, his face gradually grew serious. The other party must have a gun in his hand. At such a short distance, even if he could dodge, Su Li was still in their hands. If he did, Su Li's life would be in danger. "Let's talk, the three of you. I'll double whatever price the people behind you are offering you. The only choice now is to keep these three under control and find an opportunity to strike." Lao Wu laughed, but he dared not relax in the slightest. "I'm just joking, brother. Money is not important to us. As you know, in our line of work, the most important thing is credibility. If we lose our credibility, no one will hire us again. So you'd better go, brother." Chu Fei's eyes completely cooled as he heard Lao Wu's words, and a terrifying murderous intent exploded from him. That meant there was no more room for negotiation. Feeling the terrifying murderous intent from Chu Fei, the three of them's faces changed drastically. This guy is extraordinary. This is definitely a strong person who has come out of a sea of corpses and blood. He has been through the baptism of blood and fire. Without 10 or 8 years, he definitely couldn't have become like this. The three of them have been working together for 5 or 6 years. However, even if the three of them combined their efforts, they could not compare to the man in front of them. "Brother, don't do this. Do you want to watch her die?" Lao Su spoke. The dagger in his hand moved closer to Su Li's neck. Blood slowly trickled down the blade. "You want to die?" Xu Fei was completely enraged. In the blink of an eye, a stone flew out of his hand. Whoosh! The stone flew like a bullet towards Lao Su's wrist. Lao Su subconsciously tried to move, but he was too slow. Pop! The stone pierced his wrist, and the dagger fell to the ground. Lao Wu and Lao Hei's eyes hardened, and they raised their hands and drew their guns from their waists and fired at Xu Fei. Bang bang bang! Several shots in a row. However, they were all easily avoided by Xu Fei. He rolled and appeared in front of Lao Su. He raised his hand and smashed a punch at Lao Su, who subconsciously raised his hands to block. But this was just a feint by Xu Fei. The punch that blasted out was suddenly retracted, and his elbow slammed against Lao Su's chest. Baji bung! Bang! Lao Su's entire body was like a cannonball, blasted into the air in an instant. He didn't know how many ribs in his chest had been broken. Lying on the ground, he was unconscious. Xu Fei took the opportunity to grab the stool that was tied to Suli, and with a sudden burst of strength, he broke the stool in two. Then he hid behind an abandoned machine with Suli in his arms. Go! Lao Wu and Lao Hei knew the terror of Xu Fei. As for Lao Su, they could no longer care. From that one move, Lao Su's life was probably over. The two of them hurriedly ran outside, not even daring to look back. 2 minutes later, Xu Fei let out a sigh of relief. Slowly removed Su Li's blindfold. The latter had been in tears for a long time, and her body could not stop trembling. I'm sorry, I'm late. Xu Fei was full of apologies. If it weren't for him, Su Li would not have been in such danger. Su Li reached out and tightly embraced Xu Fei, not daring to let go for a moment. Chapter 23, The Fury from Xu Fei. 2 hours later. Xu Fei brought Su Li back to the villa. What happened today had scared her quite a bit. When she got home, she went to bed and rested. Xu Fei was in the living room, his face full of gloom. He took out his phone and called Xu Kai. Did you find out? Xu Kai took a deep breath and said, Young master, this is a bit of a problem. But it's not impossible to solve. Upon hearing this, Xu Fei's brows furrowed. What do you mean? 2 groups of people, different targets. One is targeting you, the other is targeting Su Li. An incident occurred between the 2 groups, and they fought. Young master, the 2 groups of people, the one targeting you, we have already found out, is under the Zhao group's Lu Sui. It is possible that because of previous events, they wanted to kidnap Miss Su and threaten you. As for the other group, the identity of the other party is a bit complicated. To put it simply, the other party is targeting Miss Su, but the origin of the other party is not from Daxia, but from the people who returned from Nanta. As for who exactly the other party is under, we are still investigating. Upon hearing this, Xu Fei's brows furrowed. No wonder when fighting these people, he felt that they were no ordinary opponents. They were actually guys who had returned from the South Tower. The South Tower is a place that has been in a state of constant war for many years. Death is an almost constant occurrence there, and Xu Fei has also carried out missions there. The missions were not difficult, but the guys he met were all ruthless people who didn't care about their lives. I understand. Let me know if you get any news. As for the Zhao family, you should take care of it. After saying that, Xu Fei hung up the phone. He walked lightly to the door of Su Li's room, pushed open the door, and looked at Su Li, who was sleeping soundly. A flash of tenderness appeared in his eyes. He muttered to himself, Sorry, I won't do it again next time. At this moment, in the Zhao family villa. When Lu Sui received the news from her subordinate, her face immediately turned white. What did you say? Scarface and the others are all dead. How is that possible? Scarface was her most formidable general, and he was also a martial artist. Fighting 5 people at once was no problem at all for him, and he could play with a dagger in his hands. Moreover, with more than 10 subordinates, he was unable to take down a mere bodyguard. Big sister, this is true. This incident even alerted the bigwigs at the bureau, and they are currently investigating. Upon hearing this, Lu Sui's face turned a bit ugly. I understand. I will transfer some money to your accounts later. You'd better not show your faces for a while, and wait until the storm passes. After hanging up the phone, Lu Sui sat on the sofa with his back against the wall, helplessly looking at the ceiling. Just then, Zhao Wei came out of the room. He had just finished talking with someone from the company, confirming the recent developments at the company. Seeing his wife in such a state, he couldn't help but ask, What's wrong? Lu Sui shook his head, It's failed. That guy rescued the people, and all my people are dead. The people above have already started to investigate. Upon hearing this, Zhao Wei's face changed slightly. How could this be? Is that kid made of iron? I remember, doesn't the scarred guy under you have black fire in his hands? The so-called black fire is guns bought through special means. It's completely impossible that someone with a gun in their hand would still be killed by the other party. I'm not sure either, but that's the truth. I've already told my men to hide it, and it shouldn't be traced back to us for a short period of time. Just as the two men were discussing, the sound of a hurried phone call interrupted their conversation. After answering the phone, Zhao Wei was a little dissatisfied. Name one reason why I wouldn't be angry. He had just finished talking to the company secretary on the phone, and he didn't expect it to call back. Chairman, something big has happened. Mr. Jiang and his men have sealed off our factory and taken away the general manager and the CEO, saying they need them to cooperate with the investigation. The reason is that our group is suspected of infringing on the property of others, using illegal means to wage commercial warfare, and that the products we produce contain hazardous substances. It was like a bolt from the blue, and Zhao Wei couldn't come to his senses for a long time. After a long time, he spoke. He didn't say how long it would be sealed off for? Judging from the current scale of the group, if the work stops for one day, the group will lose at least tens of millions. This does not include the cooperation with major companies. If the overtime is exceeded, the company will have to pay compensation for breach of contract. No, they just said that it will be unblocked after investigation. Zhao Wei sat down on the sofa, completely dumbfounded. He had never imagined that something like this would happen. Was this a reprisal against the Zhao family? But could the Su family command Jiangning like this? He didn't believe it. However, this was just the beginning. After finishing the phone call with his secretary, he received another phone call from the CEO of another company. Mr. Zhao, I'm sorry to bother you. I think the cooperation with your group may have to be terminated. Don't worry, we will pay the penalty as usual. Zhao Wei had not yet had a chance to speak when the other party hung up. One phone call after another caught Zhao Wei off guard. Each call was the news of a company terminating the contract. He was not even given the chance to ask any questions. It continued until the last call. Zhao, you've really gotten into a lot of trouble this time. Hey! On the other end of the line was Zhao Wei's old friend, the chairman of the Yangshi group. The two had cooperated for many years and had a good personal relationship. Olden, can you tell me more? I don't know who I've offended to cause such a big impact on the Zhao group, and even Jiangning has gone after me. Zhao Wei couldn't understand why someone like Jiangning would go after him, and the person he had offended must have a very powerful background. Old Zhao, let's be honest, I'm not sure either. But the people above have issued an order: no company in the entire Jiangnan city is allowed to cooperate with you. All companies that have cooperated with you must terminate the contract within 3 days, or face the consequences. You also know that when the big shots above speak, we little people can only do as they say. When these words fell into Zhao Wei's ears, he felt as if he had aged decades. He had worked hard to bring the Zhao group to its current position, but he was still unable to compete with the words of those big shots. He didn't even know what kind of people he had offended. Thank you, I understand. After hanging up the phone, Zhao Wei sat on the stool with a lost expression on his face. Is the Zhao group really going to end? The hard work that he built with his own hands is just gone? At this moment, the butler walked into the hall. Master, there are a few people outside, and the leader says he wants to talk to you. It seems that they are officials. Chapter 24. You are not qualified to know. The officials? Zhao Wei and Lu Sui glanced at each other, and they both saw the shock in each other's eyes. The Zhao group had just received pressure from the authorities, and now, just a few minutes later, the authorities had come knocking on the door. This was a bit too fast. However, whether it was a blessing or a curse, it could not be avoided. Now they could only pray that the other party would not deal a fatal blow to the Zhao group, otherwise they would never have a chance to turn things around. Please come in. Zhao Wei waved his hand, indicating for the butler to hurry and greet the guests. 2 minutes later, Zhu Kai arrived at the villa with Jiang Ning. When he saw Jiang Ning, Zhao Wei's face turned a bit ugly. It turned out to be Mr. Jiang, please sit. However, Jiang Ning did not reply, but instead asked Zhu Kai to sit down with both hands. At this time, Zhao Wei noticed the seemingly elderly man next to Jiang Ning. He was surprised that Jiang Ning, the number one person in Jiangnan City, asked him to sit down with both hands. The other person's background was probably shocking. Lu Sui was also no small person, and when he saw this action, he immediately turned pale. Mr. Jiang, this is. Zhao Wei wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and asked softly. The appearance of such a big shot in his home was definitely not a good thing. Jiang Ning just glanced at him indifferently, and you are not qualified to know. His words made Zhao Wei, who had been preparing flattering remarks, swallow them all. Chu Kai sat on the sofa, while Jiang Ning stood next to him, completely lacking the air of a number one figure. I wonder what this gentleman is doing here. Have I done something to offend you? Zhao Wei looked nervous and didn't dare speak loudly. Chu Kai crossed his legs and took out a cigarette from his pocket. Jiang Ning saw this and quickly took out a lighter to light Chu Kai's cigarette. This scene, as it fell into the eyes of Zhao Wei and Lu Sui, was simply a bolt from the blue. The number one man taking the initiative to light someone's cigarette? Then the other person's background must be terrifying? Zhao Wei now had no desire to find out the origin of this mysterious man. Even if he knew, so what? Could he dare to take action against someone of this level? That would be an act of seeking death. You are Zhao Wei, the chairman of the Zhao Group, right? Jiang Ning didn't sit down, so Zhao Wei naturally didn't dare to sit down either. He could only stand to one side and nod. Yes. I am the chairman of the Zhao Group. Chu Kai took a deep drag on his cigarette and exhaled slowly. Okay. I'm here today to deal with a simple matter. There are two options in front of you. I'll give you 10 million, and I want all the shares of the Zhao Group. You and the rest of the Zhao family must never appear in Jiangnan again. The second option is to go to prison, for a period of 20 to 30 years, which is not a long time. Choose. Zhao Wei was stunned by the two options. 10 million? Even if all the companies in the Zhao Group refused to cooperate with him, the value would still be at least 3 billion. He wanted to buy the entire Zhao Group for 10 million? What a joke. As for the second option, Zhao Wei didn't even want to think about it. I don't know what I have done to offend you, my lord. If I have done something wrong, please tell me and I will apologize. But you want me to sell the entire Zhao Group for 10 million? Isn't that a bit much? He rejected both options. He has worked hard to get the Zhao Group to where it is now. He won't even look at 10 million. Jiang Ning shook his head. Chairman Zhao, there are some things you can't get involved in. Chu Kai raised his hand to indicate that Jiang Ning should stop talking. Jiang Ning immediately shut up. It seems that Chairman Zhao is not happy. How about this, 5 million, if you don't want it, you can go to jail. While he was talking, Chu Kai waved his hand. Jiang Ning immediately understood, took a stack of information from the briefcase on the side and threw it on the table. Zhao Wei quickly picked up the document on the table and read it. It didn't matter if he didn't read it, but after reading it, he was pale. Lu Sui on the side couldn't help but pick it up and take a look, and after taking a look, the whole person froze in place. The document was full of the bad things the two had done. The president of a company refused to cooperate with the Zhao Group and later committed suicide by jumping off a building due to depression. The general manager of a certain company, after having an argument with Zhao Wei at a banquet, was found dead by suicide at home. There were more than 20 such things. And on the next page, it was written about the two people's experience of instructing their subordinates to commit crimes. It was clear and explicit, not missing a word. Zhao Wei sat down on the sofa, and many things had been over for more than 10 years. However, he never expected that the other party would have such great ability to dig it out. With this, isn't that enough? Zhao Dong, this is a golden opportunity. I have brought the contract with me. If you are willing, we can sign it now. If not, I will give this document to Xiao Jiang. Chu Kai's face wore a smile, but beneath it, everyone knew what it represented. These things on it are enough to sentence the two to death countless times. I will sign it. Zhao Wei never would have imagined that he, who should have been rising through the ranks, would end up in such a situation because of a trivial matter. After signing the contract, Zhao Wei felt like he had aged 10 years. He sat on the sofa, listless and dejected. Sir, can you tell me what I have done to offend you? He was puzzled. He had only targeted Su Li and the little bodyguard by her side. Even if the Su family had extraordinary abilities, they would not be able to find such big shots to take up their cause. As for the little bodyguard, it was even more impossible. You have offended someone you shouldn't have. Just like Su Li. You shouldn't be unfamiliar with him, right? Su Li? Zhao Wei let out a miserable laugh. He kind of understood. Was it because he kidnapped Su Li that this consequence had occurred? I understand, villain. Shu Kai extinguished the cigarette but before getting up. Pack up your things and get out. From now on, Jiangnan will have no place for you. Remember, if you dare to set foot in Jiangnan, I'll let you eat bullets. After saying this, he led Jiangning away. Zhao Wei and Lu Sui glanced at each other, and they both saw the tragedy in each other's eyes. No one would have thought that a powerful enterprise like the Zhao family would disappear overnight. The entire Jiangnan city was rumoring that the Zhao family had offended an extremely terrifying big shot. Chapter 25. The Zhao Group changes its name Truman. After a day of rest. It wasn't until the next morning that Su Li came out of her room in a daze. Chu Fei was wearing an apron and had made breakfast. Seeing Su Li standing in the hallway, he waved. You're awake? I've made some pumpkin porridge for you, so go wash up and eat. Su Li obediently changed into some clothes and washed up before coming downstairs. The sweet pumpkin porridge was warm, and it immediately relaxed her somewhat nervous heart. With her beautiful eyes, she just looked at Chu Fei across the table, drinking the porridge and eating buns. Chu Fei noticed her gaze and stopped what he was doing. What? Do I have something on my face? Su Li smiled and said, No, I suddenly feel that you are quite handsome. For a moment, she felt that Chu Fei was a man she could rely on. However, the feeling disappeared as soon as she thought about seeing him walking so closely with another woman on the floor above the company before. Was I not handsome before? Are you kidding? The women who want to chase after me are enough to go around the south of the Yangtze River. Chu Fei shamelessly bragged. In fact, there are many women who want to marry him because of his status. But he is not a casual person, and naturally he will not marry just any woman. Su Li glanced at her, took a couple of mouthfuls of porridge, and suddenly asked, Last time downstairs at the company, the girl in the Ferrari was your girlfriend, right? As soon as she asked, she regretted it. She is not his girlfriend, so why ask this question? No. Chu Fei shook his head firmly. Girlfriend? Since he was a child, he had never had a girlfriend. Women only slowed down his speed of drawing his sword. You really don't? Su Li suddenly felt happy, and her tone of voice became more excited. What? Do you want to be my girlfriend? Chu Fei laughed, but Su Li gave him a blank stare. Dream on. Even if you were the only man left in the world, I wouldn't choose you. Although he said that, Su Li felt that it was not even necessary to wait until that time, for she was afraid that she would already be taken by this guy. Cut it out. If there were only one man left in the world, do you think I would choose you? These words almost made Su Li spit out a mouthful of porridge. Good guy. You. Chu Fei laughed. With your level of ability, you still want to argue with me? Eat your porridge. After breakfast, Su Li subconsciously wanted to go to the company to take a look. Now that the Zhao Group is putting so much pressure on him, and since he was kidnapped yesterday, the 2 billion investor will definitely be furious when he sees that he missed the appointment. If the other party doesn't invest, then Kao Company will really be finished. But Chu Fei said on the side, Today is Saturday, no work. Why are you going to the company? Overtime? It was only then that Su Li remembered that it was Saturday. There have been so many annoying things going on lately that he had actually forgotten that it was Saturday. Okay. Su Li's face showed a little more worry. She took out her phone and scanned the latest news. When she saw a piece of news, she froze in place. After a long time, she screamed. Ah! Something big has happened. Chu Fei was washing the dishes in the kitchen and heard her scream, so he hurried out. What's the big deal in the morning? But Su Li handed her phone over to Chu Fei with a surprised face. A news article clearly stated that the Zhao Group had been completely liquidated, taken over by a mysterious tycoon, and renamed, Going Out. The exact price of the takeover was unknown. Judging from this news article, the Zhao Group has now changed hands. In other words, the Zhao Group is now completely out of Wei Zhao's control. Then Kao Company still has a chance. I thought something was wrong, and this is it? Wasting my time doing the dishes, really? Chu Fei responded with some disdain. In fact, yesterday afternoon, he had already received a call from Chu Kai. The Zhao Group had been taken over by him, and Chu Fei was the new chairman of the Zhao Group, with absolute control. 95% of the shares were in Chu Fei's hands, and the remaining shares were in the hands of some retail investors. However, he didn't have time to manage a company right now. So he handed it over to Chu Kai and asked him to find someone from the family to manage the Zhao Group. And renamed the Zhao Group to the Truman Group. This is great news for our company. With the Zhao Group gone, our KO company will no longer be under pressure. In this way, our research can continue. Su Li was so happy that her eyes were narrowed. Chu Fei smiled and didn't say a word. This silly woman. Let's go. Today, my sister is happy, so I'll take you out shopping. You've been here for so long, and you only have those two clothes. Today, I'll give you a good makeover. In fact, Chu Fei didn't have any requirements for what he wore. Simplicity and a good fit were enough. As for whether it looked good, that was another matter. Chu Fei was a million times unhappy. Going shopping, how many guys like to go shopping? But for the safety of this woman, he still had to follow, acting as a bag boy. Meanwhile, in a room in a small hotel that didn't require registration. Have you thought of how to explain to Yi Gu? The one speaking was Lao Hei. A bandage was wrapped around his arm, and his face was a little pale. This mission failed, and Lao Su is dead, and he is definitely going to be punished by the organization. Tell the truth. Lao Wu's face was particularly gloomy. In fact, he didn't expect the bodyguard by the woman's side to be so powerful. He was actually able to rescue the woman from them. Moreover, the gap in strength between the two sides was completely not on the same level. The other party was like a strong man with a big knife, while the three of them were just children who could barely walk. That's all there is to it. But I'm curious, why would someone with such strength protect such a woman? I've investigated the woman's information, and she's just the president of a small company. How could she afford to hire such a master? Lao Hei was full of confusion. From the information they obtained, combined with the information they investigated themselves, this woman doesn't seem to have any background. How would I know? After this incident, that guy will definitely not let her go, and there is basically no chance of another attempt. Moreover, the bug we planted in the woman's home should have been found by him as well. The two men looked at each other and fell silent. After a long while, Lao Wu spoke. Let me explain to Yi Gu. After saying this, he took out his mobile phone and dialed a number. Hello, Yi Gu? A somewhat hoarse voice came from the other end of the line. Is it done? Lao Wu's voice was suppressed. The mission failed. Chapter 26 Bodyguard Model? In the bustling commercial street. How about this one? Su Li was helping Chu Fei choose clothes that fit. A blue suit, a white shirt, and a blue tie. It's okay. Chu Fei really didn't have the energy to accompany this woman shopping. It's been a few hours, and they're still wandering around. He carried bags of clothes, 7 or 8 sets, and they were all his. Even if he changed one set a day, it wouldn't be this fast. You have no sense of style. These clothes don't suit you. Su Li put the clothes back where they had been. Is this about right? There are enough clothes here for you to wear. Chu Fei felt that even if he were to go to the battlefield and fight bravely, it would not be as hard. Accompanying a woman shopping was simply torture. It took an hour or two to choose just one outfit. Fine. Let's go home then. Su Li saw the 7 or 8 outfits that Chu Fei was carrying, and she didn't realize that she had bought him so much. This was the first time she had bought clothes for a man. As soon as they got back in the car, they received a call from Fong Chung. My dear President Su, it's Saturday, why don't you come over to my company and hang out? After a few days of rest, Fong Qing's mood had always improved a little. Sure. Chu Fei and I are just shopping. We're just finishing up, so we'll come over now. It was hard for Su Li to relax for once, and she didn't want to go home so soon. U-turn, go to supermodel. Chu Fei was feeling really depressed. Couldn't he just stay at home? Why did he have to go out and have fun? But since Su Li was the boss, they drove to Fong Qing's company. The receptionist at the front desk was no stranger to Su Li. Yes. Your boss is upstairs, right? The receptionist nodded, yes, in the office. Su Li led Chu Fei straight to Fong Qing's office. At the moment, in Fong Qing's office. What? Zhang Yu. You want to resign? Have I not treated you well enough? Fong Cheng looked at the male model Zhang Yu in front of her with a face full of incomprehension. This was a relatively well-known company in her own company, and the monthly salary had reached 6 figures. However, she never expected him to actually want to resign. Seeing that the filming was about to start soon, if he resigned now, where would she find someone to replace him? President Fong, I'm really sorry. I don't want this month's salary, and I'll put down this resignation report. In fact, I'll be honest with you. A big company has offered me a high salary. As you know, everyone is in this for the money, and I'll go with whoever pays more. So I'm sorry. After Zhang Yu finished speaking, he turned around and started walking towards the office door. Just then, Su Li and Xu Fei pushed the door open. Bang! The heavy glass door slammed hard against Zhang Yu's nose. Ah! In an instant, there was a nosebleed. There was a long, uneven scar on his nose, with a little bit of blood coming out. Zhang Yu squatted on the ground, covering his nose, tears streaming down his face. Who is it? Don't you have eyes? Su Li and Xu Fei walked into the room and looked at Zhang Yu, who had been hit in the nose. I'm sorry. Zhang, I hit you, are you okay? Zhang Yu looked up at this time and looked at the almost perfect Su Li in front of him. He rubbed his nose hard and tore off some tissues from Feng Qing's desk to wipe the nosebleed. It turned out to be President Su. I'm fine, I'll go first. Zhang Yu never thought about getting involved with someone of Su Li's caliber, let alone compensation. Even if he is a relatively famous model in Jiangnan City, the other party is the boss of a large company. It's not a matter of minutes to get him? Zhang Yu, don't you want to think about it? Feng Qing said to Zhang Yu's departing back. But the latter ignored her and just walked away. What's wrong? Seeing that Feng Qing's face looked a little strange, Su Li walked up to her and put his arm around her neck. Forget it. I suspect that Zhang Yu has been poached by my ex-boyfriend's company. I only heard recently that he has actually teamed up with another woman to open a modeling company and has poached quite a few people from me. Feng Cheng was full of depression. It's fine to break up with your ex-boyfriend, but I didn't expect the other party to actually poach employees. And the price offered was quite a bit higher than the one offered by my side. Many people couldn't resist the temptation and joined their ex-boyfriend's company. Su Li was full of anger when she heard this. This is too much. Just break up, and then poach your employees. Next time I see him, I'll have to beat him up. After saying this, she raised her little pink fists menacingly. Feng Qing was full of depression and took Su Li's hand. You said that I will start taking pictures right away, and I have already prepared the clothes, so where can I find someone? Xu Fei was sitting on the sofa, bored and brushing his phone. Suddenly, he felt two unfriendly gazes fall on him. Looking up, Su Li and Feng Qing were staring at him straight. Why are you looking at me like that? Is there something on my face? Feng Qing's eyes were shining. In fact, compared to Zhang Yu, Xu Fei was not at all inferior. Whether it's his figure or appearance. With a little makeup and dressing up, he'd definitely be a hit as a model. Handsome Chu, can you help? Xu Fei was full of doubts. What help? Su Li and Feng Qing glanced at each other, got up, and helped Xu Fei walk towards the dressing room. Half an hour later. When Xu Fei came out of the dressing room, he had become a different person. His hair was flowing, his clothes were trendy, and his muscles were perfectly streamlined. As soon as he came out, the eyes of many of the models and young women outside the door went straight. Wow! Is this the new model at our company? He's so much better looking than Zhang Yu. Zhang Yu is a scumbag, how can he compare to this new handsome guy? Even Su Li and Feng Qing looked at Xu Fei with a little more surprise in their eyes. Unexpectedly, when Xu Fei got dressed up, he was completely a handsome guy. Feng Qing gently patted Su Li's buttocks and said, We're best friends, why don't you let me have him? He's your bodyguard anyway, so he won't lose out if he becomes my boyfriend. Su Li exploded at this. Who are you calling a best friend? This is not negotiable. I've finally found such a bodyguard, and I don't want him to be snatched away by a pig. Feng Qing froze for 3 seconds before she reacted. Screw you. You're the pig. The two women were playing and fighting on the side, while Xu Fei was frowning on the side. He was a good single soldier, but he was actually treated like a model? After the two finally finished fighting, Feng Qing walked up with a smile on her face. Unexpectedly, handsome guy Chu is really handsome. The term rich and handsome should be used to describe someone like you. Right. While talking, Feng Qing reached out and gave Xu Fei's but a hard squeeze. Chapter 27, Against Su Li. After leaving Feng Qing's modeling agency, Zhu Fei's entire face was dark. Don't ask, just ask if you were groped from beginning to end. He didn't understand why a group of young girls cared so much about this rough man. It's fine to grope, but they went straight for the hands-on approach. Is a person's appearance really that important? He admits that he is good-looking, but it's not his fault. What are you thinking about? Drive home. Su Li's face was not much better. Zhu Fei was being groped by a group of little girls, and she could only watch helplessly. She couldn't stop them from doing it. She helped Zhu Fei change clothes and took the opportunity to grope here and there. Although she was the first person to eat crabs, she was drunk that night and had no recollection of what it felt like. If she had to say how it felt, it was one word: pain. Ha? Is the big boss angry? Are you jealous? Zhu Fei started the car and teased. It's true, in the past 2 days, he has noticed that Su Li is always jealous. Ever since she met Wang Xie, the girl has kept a close eye on herself, and gets angry if she gets too close to other girls. Even her best friend Feng Cheng is the same. Who's jealous? Sick. I'm not. Su Li's mouth was very stubborn, and she turned her head to ignore Zhu Fei's teasing. Zhu Fei smiled and didn't say anything. Women are just so troublesome. It was already afternoon when they returned to the villa. After a long day of sightseeing, Su Li was very tired and went to rest in her room. Zhu Fei, on the other hand, sat in the living room playing with his phone. He wasn't thinking about going to sleep yet. He was just about to give Chu Kai a call to ask if he had found out who was behind the plot against Su Li. But unexpectedly, Chu Kai called him first. Young master, have you rested yet? Chu Kai asked in a low voice. Not yet. Any news? Zhu Fei leaned back on the sofa, waiting for Chu Kai's answer. Yes. But we can't get involved in this matter. Upon hearing this, Chu Kai's brows furrowed slightly. Can't get involved? Does the organization targeting Su Li have a very big background? That shouldn't be the case. His family's influence spans the entire country, so even if the other party has a big background, they should still have the strength to intervene, right? Tell me. Chu Kai took a deep breath and slowly explained. Young master. After our intelligence organization's investigation, we found that the person you dealt with was from the military. The other party was under special orders to return to the building. The reason for targeting Miss Su is most likely for the medicine she is currently researching. Young master, I don't quite understand, what exactly is Miss Su's company researching that could attract the attention of the military? Chu Kai couldn't understand. The small KO company is most likely researching common miracle drugs or drugs for certain special diseases. But it can attract the attention of the military and take direct action. He dares not speculate on what Su Li's company is researching. The military? Impossible. I have certain intelligence in the military. If the other party makes such a big move, I would know about it. Zhu Fei is also very puzzled. His status in the military can be said to be second to none. Although many tasks do not require his consent, he is still out there after all. However, the military has regulations prohibiting anyone from targeting ordinary people or a certain company, and prohibiting the abuse of private power. In the current situation, someone has violated the regulations. I'm not sure about this either. Young master, as you know, family members rarely interfere in military affairs. So there's nothing I can do. Chu Kai is also at his wit's end. There has long been an order in the family prohibiting anyone from interfering with or participating in any military actions. The only exception is Zhu Fei. Because he is himself a member of the military. I see. I'll give him a call. Hang up. After hanging up the phone, Zhu Fei leaned back on the sofa with a frown. The military's actions were targeting Su Li? Just for a little medicine? It can't be that the medicine Su Li was researching was some kind of biochemical drug, right? If that was the case, then the military targeting Su Li would be fine. But if that was the case, then why did Master still want him to protect Su Li? He thought about it for a long time before taking a deep breath. He pressed a familiar number and dialed. After 3 rings, a man's voice came from the other end of the line. Who is this? Xiao Yu, it's me. Zhu Fei's tone was a little cold as he spoke. Fei Ge? Why are you calling me? Don't you know you're on a mission? Obviously, the man on the other end of the line, Xiao Yu, was a little surprised. Normally, before a mission is completed, one cannot speak with others in the military department, for the sake of confidentiality. But this is only limited to some personnel, and Xu Fei is not one of them. Something minor has come up, so I'm asking you. Has the military done anything? Obviously, Xiao Yu was stunned. He thought about it for a few seconds before coming back to his senses. No. We haven't had any missions recently, we're just resting in the camp. Brother Fei, what's wrong that you had to personally call and ask? Xiao Yu is a special intelligence organization under Xu Fei's command, including but not limited to the military, foreign countries, etc. Nothing. The military hasn't done anything recently? He didn't quite believe it. If there hasn't been any movement at all, then how could the person targeting Su Li be someone from the military? If you say there hasn't been any, it's not true either. It seems that something happened with Yi Ao before, but he didn't use anyone from the military. We didn't continue to follow up on it afterwards. Brother Fei, what's going on? Xu Fei's expression was cold. Yi Ao. A being of the same level as him, both in terms of status and strength. Moreover, when he was in the military, this guy had quite a few shenanigans. However, Xu Fei was not sure if he was involved in this matter. If he was involved, Xu Fei would not mind turning his back on him. I see. Recently, observe Yi Ao more closely. If you have any news, contact me directly. After hanging up the phone, Xu Fei frowned. It seems that it is time to ask Su Li what the hell this woman's company is researching. If it is a biochemical drug, then it is no wonder that Su Li would be targeted. After all, without the permission of the state and the prohibition of private research, once discovered, it is a matter of losing one's head. If it is not, then it can only mean that someone is deliberately targeting Su Li. It's just that targeting Su Li, the owner of a small company, is a bit too petty-minded. In fact, Xu Fei also thought of a possibility. That is Su Li's identity. Apart from the company president, nothing is known about Su Li's family identity. It is very likely that the other party is not targeting Su Li, but the person behind Su Li. Chapter 28: The Secret of KO Company. The next day. Are you ready? Hurry up. Downstairs, Xu Fei is waiting for Su Li. Today is the weekend, and Su Li is going home for a family dinner. It's a good thing that Xu Fei is going with her to meet her family. He has been following Su Li for a while, and apart from Su Wu's, he has not met anyone else in Su Li's family. What's the rush? Don't you know women take a long time to get ready? Su Li came out of the powder room, wearing a simple white knee-length skirt, with a small jacket on top, and with that makeup, she looked like a lady of the manor. Let's go. The two drove towards another villa area in the city. In the car. Let me ask you a question. Xu Fei asked as he drove. Speak. Su Li was sitting in the passenger seat, looking at her makeup in the mirror, a little dissatisfied, and was fixing it. Tell me honestly, what exactly is the latest drug your company has been researching? Upon hearing these words, Su Li stopped what she was doing. She stared at him, not saying a word for a long time. If you hadn't been here for so long, I would really suspect that you are a mole sent by someone else. Someone who specializes in spying on my company. As for the company's latest drug, that is confidential. I have already told Xu Fei about it before, and now he is asking again, so obviously there is something wrong. Do you know why you were kidnapped? Xu Fei's words came as a shock. Su Li's eyebrows furrowed, and she looked at him with some confusion in her eyes. Xu Fei had told her before that she had been kidnapped by the Zhao family. The reason for her kidnapping was probably the company's secrets. But now, Xu Fei brought up the topic again, which made her feel a little unusual. What do you mean? Xu Fei's gaze looked at the red light ahead and he stepped on the brakes. It doesn't mean anything. You are being targeted, and it is very likely for your company's secrets. The person targeting you is not the Zhao group. And now, the Zhao group has changed hands. Do you understand what I mean? Upon hearing this, Su Li was silent. The Zhao group changing hands and changing its name was completely unexpected. For KO Company, it was a good thing. But in Xu Fei's words, it was obviously still a conspiracy against himself. Do you really want to know about the drug our company is researching? I can tell you, but you can't tell anyone. You swear. Su Li was well aware of the value of the company's latest research. But for Xu Fei, she had no intention of keeping it a secret either. Even if Chu Fei knew, she believed that the other party would not tell anyone. Wait a minute, let me guess. Your company, what you are researching is not some biochemical virus stuff, is it? If that's the case, then I'm interested. In fact, Chu Fei said this completely on purpose. The reason he said this was to see how Suli would react. If her expression revealed anything unusual, he would be able to tell. Are you kidding me? I'm not a terrorist, why would I study that kind of thing? Suli gave him a fierce glare. Seeing her reaction, Chu Fei secretly let out a sigh of relief. Thank goodness the girl hasn't studied that kind of thing, otherwise it would be difficult for him to protect her as well. In fact, our company has been researching drugs that can improve telomerase activity in the human body. This kind of thing is an experiment for the whole world, because no company has been able to research this kind of thing yet. Chu Fei didn't know anything about this, so he could only look at her with a dumbfounded expression. Seeing her confusion, Suli began to explain again. It's very simple. Judging from the current life expectancy of the entire population, it has reached an average of over 80 years old. The telomerase substance in the human body can split up to 26 times, which can achieve a life expectancy of over 80 years old. Once I succeed in my research, if I can increase the number of telomerase splits to over 30 times, then a person's life expectancy can reach 100 years old or above. Moreover, the drug I am researching can also resist certain viruses, just like cancer cells. Upon hearing this, Chu Fei was so shocked that he could not find the words to express it. Isn't this a drug that extends life? If this is researched and developed, I'm afraid the whole world will go crazy, right? You have to understand that life, old age, sickness, and death are all uncontrollable. And once there is something that can change a person's lifespan, no matter who it is, they will want to live a little longer, right? Now he also sort of understands why someone targeted Suli. Because the thing she was researching was terrifying. Once it is under control, it can practically strangle the necks of all the rich people in the world. Which rich person wouldn't want to live a little longer? It's not hard to imagine that if this kind of thing is researched, the value of a single drug would be tens of millions or even over 100 million, and that would not be a problem at all. So, why did I say that this kind of thing is confidential? Now do you understand? Suli was also very nervous. No one knows what kind of changes this kind of thing will bring to the world. The prerequisite is that she will be able to research it. You really are a fierce woman. You dare to study this thing, you are a ruthless person. Chu Fei grinned, not knowing what to say. While the two were talking, they had already arrived at the Tianhao Villa area. In front of a luxurious villa, Chu Fei parked the car in a parking space. Let's go. They walked to the door and knocked. The door opened, and Su Wu was standing in the doorway. Seeing Chu Fei behind Su Li, he frowned slightly, as if he was a little dissatisfied. However, he didn't say much. Come in. Your mother is still cooking dinner and is chatting with your grandmother. After saying this, he let the two of them enter the house. Chu Fei followed Su Li into the hall. In the house, in addition to Su Wu, there was also an old woman in her 70s. She was Su Li's grandmother, Zhang Taiying. She was leaning on a cane in her hand, and her hair had long since turned gray. Her face, which was lined with wrinkles, looked a little pale, but you could still tell that she was a beautiful woman in her youth. No wonder Su Li is so pretty. My dear granddaughter, you haven't visited me for such a long time. Su Li put down her bag, sat next to Zhang Taiying, and took her arm. Grandma, I'm here now, aren't I? Zhang Taiying patted her little hand and her gaze fell on Chu Fei. She looked him up and down and beamed. Is this your boyfriend? Not bad, he's in good shape. Grandma is old too, I want to hug my great-grandson. Su Li's pretty face suddenly turned red, and she said coquettishly, Grandma, what are you talking about? I'm still young, I don't want to get married. Zhang Taiying laughed and stroked her hair. Silly girl, which girl doesn't want to get married? You're 24, you're not young. Back in the day, I followed your grandfather when I was 15, and in the blink of an eye, more than 50 years have passed. Chapter 29, The Su Family Background. Grandma, you said that Grandpa has been missing for so many years, where do you think he went? Su Li was a little curious. In fact, she has not seen her grandfather since she was born. Even her father only saw him until she was 10 years old, and she has not seen him since. When asked about this topic, Zhang Taiying's eyes filled with a trace of tears. He may have been buried in the battlefield. If he were still alive, he would definitely want to come and see you, his good granddaughter. Buried in the battlefield? When he heard these words, Chu Fei's eyes revealed a trace of surprise. It was not difficult to tell that Zhang's husband was also a soldier. Grandma, are you saying that Grandpa was a soldier? In fact, I also worked in the military department for a period of time. What was Grandpa's name? Maybe I have heard of it before. He added. Suddenly, the gaze of the three family members fell on him. You worked in the military department for a period of time? Su Wu's eyebrows slightly wrinkled, and his gaze at Chu Fei changed a little. At least, it's not like before. Yes. I spent 3 years in the military, but then I didn't choose to continue because of something. Chu Fei nodded, but he hid the length of time he had spent. The time he had spent in the military was far more than 3 years. He just didn't want Su Wu and the others to misunderstand. Young man, what's your name? Zhang Taiying rubbed the tears in her eyes and looked at Chu Fei. Grandma, his name is Chu Fei, the bodyguard I hired. He's awesome, he can break stones with his chest and split bricks with his bare hands. Su Li snickered from the side. Chu Fei looked helpless. What was all this about? You girl, he spent 3 years in the military, this is all child's play. Your grandfather was bored with all this a long time ago. Zhang Taiying's face broke into a smile, and she gently rubbed Su Li's head. Chu Fei, right? Not a bad name, I'll call you Xiu Fei from now on. No wonder when you came in, I thought you looked very nice. So you're also from the military department. Zhang Taiying waved her hand, indicating for Chu Fei to sit over. Chu Fei also found it hard to refuse the kindness of an old man, and sat down next to Zhang Taiying. Little Fei, your grandfather, his name is Su Jinghua. I don't know if you've heard of this name when you were in the military. Upon hearing the nanny's reply, Chu Fei pondered for a moment. From the time he joined the military to the present, he has known all the officers, big and small. According to Grandma, Su Li's grandfather has been in the military for at least 30 years, and if he hadn't been killed, he would have at least reached the rank of general. However, in his memory, there were quite a few people with the surname Su in the military, but there was no one called Su Jinghua. Grandma, among the people I know, there are quite a few with the surname Su, but I have never heard of the name you mentioned. Besides, Grandpa should be in his 70s, right? There are only 3 people with the surname Su in this age group. If we guess based on age, one of these 3 people is called Su Kaigua, one is Su Yuquan, and the last one is his master, Su Nianying. The first 2 are the head chef in the kitchen and the head of the literature and art department, both of whom are in their 70s. As for his master, he is also full of white hair. Although he is old, his strength is not to be underestimated. Of the entire dragon team of 13 members, no more than 5 can go 3 rounds with the master. As for those who can spar with the master, there is only one of them, and that is me. Perhaps, he is already dead. Zhang Taiying lowered her head, and there was a glimmer of tears in her cloudy eyes. Su Li also grasped her hand and comforted her softly. Grandma, don't be sad. Grandpa may be gone, but he must be very happy to see you in such good health. Zhang Taiying raised her wrinkled hands, wiped away the tears at the corners of her eyes, smiled, and said, My greatest wish now is to hold a great-grandchild. As soon as she finished speaking, Su Li's face turned a little red. Grandma. Zhang Taiying turned her head and set her gaze on Chu Fei again. Little Fei, you're not married yet, are you? What do you think of my Su Li? Upon hearing this, Chu Fei didn't know how to respond. So it turns out that Grandma Jiang is trying to set the 2 of them up. If she knew that Su Li and I had already consummated our marriage, she would probably be overjoyed. Grandma. He's a bandit. He has a thick skin. Su Li said with some dissatisfaction. A thick skin is what allows you to earn a living. Some people with thin skins just starve. Zhang Taiying did not speak in favor of her granddaughter, but instead spoke well of Chu Fei. Chu Fei could only sit there awkwardly, not knowing how to respond. Let's eat. Su Li's mother, Zhang Qinglian, placed a bowl of milky white Crucian carp soup on the table. Let's go, Grandma, let's eat, ignore him. Su Li helped Zhang Taiying walk towards the table. As a bodyguard, Chu Fei would not eat with his boss's family. However, in this family, Zhang Taiying was the one in charge. Fei, we won't be able to finish all this food, come and eat with us. Zhang Taiying spoke, and Su Wu didn't dare say anything more. Although there was a little bit of rejection in her heart, the old lady had a good impression of this boy. That's right. The guest is a guest, why didn't you ask Fei to join us? You're so old and still don't know how to behave. Zhang Xinglian scolded with a smile, took off her apron, and served rice to the few people. The family banquet ended in this laughter and joy. As night approached, Su Li and Xu Fei bid farewell to the Zhang family and others. In the car. Bandit, you really spent 3 years in the military? How come I didn't know about it? Su Li looked at him curiously. Xu Fei had never told her about this before. Do I have to tell you no matter what color underwear I'm wearing? Upon hearing this, Su Li gave him a fierce glare. Stupid bandit. All you do is act like a rascal all day long. Xu Fei thought for a moment and then continued, I'll call my friends in the military and ask them to help look into your grandfather's case. Maybe, your grandfather is still alive. Speaking of her grandfather, Su Li's eyes actually became more fanciful. She had never met her grandfather, and when she was young, she saw other children being taken out to play by their grandfathers, and she longed for that too. Well, if Grandma knew, she would definitely be very happy too. Thank you, Big Bandit. Chapter 30, Being Followed. Every Monday is a busy day for workers. Su Li is no exception, arriving at the office early in the morning to start her day. As the president, her workload is not heavy. Today, in addition to completing some company affairs, she also needs to go to the research institute to check on the latest drug research. 9 a.m. There is a knock on the door outside the office. Enter. Su Li stops what she is doing and looks at the secretary who has just entered. President Su, the president of the Juanhao Group, says he wants to talk to you about cooperation. Xu Fei, who was standing nearby, was slightly taken aback. Juanhao Group? Isn't this Wang Xie's company? Could it be that this girl really wants to invest here? Last time, I only added a few words. Su Li, on the other hand, was full of surprise, and there was a little more confusion in her eyes. Juanhao Group is one of the few neutral companies in Jiangnan City, and its size is not much smaller than the former Zhao Group. Please come in. By the way, tidy up the VIP meeting room and prepare to receive guests. Su Li hurriedly got up. The other party came to the door on their own initiative, so they must be given full face. However, the secretary's face showed some distress. President Su, this time it's not just the Juanhao Group that's here, even the Truman Group is here. This time, it was Su Li's turn to be shocked. After the Zhao Group became the Truman Group, there had been no news. This time, they actually came directly to the door. What is this Truman Group? She was a little confused as to why this Truman Group had come to her small company. The other party said they wanted to talk about cooperation. And the other party clearly stated that the investment amount would not be less than 2 billion. At this moment, Su Li instantly understood. This company that acquired the Zhao Group was none other than Truman Group. And the mysterious investor who wanted to invest in her company before, saying that he would invest 2 billion, was probably someone from the Truman Group. Please come in. Forget it, I'll go there myself. After saying this, Su Li quickly fixed her makeup and took Xu Fei downstairs. In the lobby downstairs, Zhu Kai was sitting on the sofa with 2 assistants waiting for Xu Fei and Su Li. On the other sofa, Wang Xie was stretching her long legs and drinking the coffee that the receptionist had just made. Next to her stood a female assistant wearing glasses. However, after 2 minutes, Su Li and Xu Fei arrived late. Sorry to keep the 2 bosses waiting. Why don't we go up to the VIP room? Su Li had heard of Wang Xie's name and had seen her photo. However, he had never heard of Zhu Kai. He could only address the 2 as boss. Today was Monday, and Boss Su must have been busy. It's fine, let's talk in the VIP room. Zhu Kai laughed, got up, and straightened his suit. Wang Xie also got up from the sofa and nodded slightly. Boss Su, I have heard a lot about you, and today I see that you are truly a heroine among women. Su Li smiled faintly, and President Wang was too kind. President Wang is truly a heroine among women. In front of President Wang, I am just the boss of a small company. For some reason, Su Li always felt that this Wang Xie in front of her looked a bit familiar. But she couldn't remember where she had seen her before. This figure, this appearance. President Wang is too kind. Let's talk in the VIP room. While talking, the several people had already gotten on the elevator and arrived at the VIP room on the top floor. The negotiations were completed in just half an hour. The Truman Group invested 2 billion yuan and acquired 30% of Kaio's shares. The Juanhao Group invested 800 million yuan and acquired 12% of the shares. Excluding the shares held by the 2 individuals, Kaio is still under the control of Su Li. Wang Xie invested 800 million yuan, which Chu Fei did not expect. Although he told her last time that an investment of 500 million yuan would be enough, he did not expect her to invest 800 million yuan directly this time. President Wang, President Chu. I will host a banquet tonight to entertain our two distinguished guests. Having been the CEO for a few years, she should have some sense of propriety. Besides, this investment is definitely the biggest she has ever seen. President Su, you are too kind. However, there is something I need to explain to you. I am only the company's agent, and the chairman has not yet come to take office. At this, Su Li was a little taken aback. With an investment of 2 billion, the chairman is not even present? Wang Xie was also a little curious. What exactly is the background of this Truman Group, investing 2 billion without batting an eye? Moreover, the chairman did not show up. He invested in Kaio Company purely out of respect for Chu Fei. But in private, he has also learned about the direction of Kaio Company in some reports, and feels that the company's future achievements may not be low. However, this Truman Group just took over the Zhao Group a few days ago and invested 2 billion. She doesn't believe for a second that the mysterious chairman has nothing to do with Su Li. President Chu, you're too kind. One thing is one thing, and this time I'm just inviting President Wang and President Chu. When the chairman comes next time, it's not too late for me to invite him. Su Li smiled and shook hands with the two men. Chu Kai nodded slightly and smiled without saying a word. This little girl would never guess that the chairman of Truman was Chu Fei, who was standing behind her. Before leaving, Wang Xie didn't forget to throw a flirtatious glance at Chu Fei. It seemed to say, I've already done what you said. Chu Fei had a dark face and didn't know how to refute it. After the two left, Su Li was greatly pleased. Bandit, speak. What is Juanhao Group investing in us for? The other party is of a size that is fully qualified to compete with Chuman. Isn't she afraid of losing money by investing in my small company? In the office, Su Li was beaming from ear to ear. It's probably because they like the future direction of your company. As for Truman, he may have also seen this. This is great, so much capital, it will be credited tomorrow, and the company will be more than enough to start a new round of expansion. Su Li nodded, this was indeed under her consideration. With the Zhao Group gone, there was no more pressure. Expanding the company was a given, but the prerequisite was still the location. Right, pack up and go to the research institute. See what the latest research status is. Su Li contemplated for a while and decided to bring Chu Fei along. After all, he had already told this guy confidential company information, so it was fine to bring him along. Chu Fei was also curious and wanted to see where this research institute was hidden. The two drove straight out of the city. However, Chu Fei felt something was wrong as soon as they left the city. There was a small black car behind them, which had been following them since they left the company. Even now, as they left the city, it was still following them, just 100 meters behind. At first, he thought it might just be a coincidence. But from the company to the city exit, the entire half-hour journey, the other party's route was exactly following his. Whenever he changed lanes, the other party changed lanes as well. Interesting. I'd like to see what you're really up to.